Chapter 445. The He family received the reward, but there was no sadness or joy. The younger generation of the He family, when they were just a few years old, they already knew what life and death was. They were used to seeing blood, not to mention old Madam He, Foreign He, and the daughter-in-law of the He family below them, who hadn't seen the cruelty of the battlefield. Thus, who would care about those worldly possessions? Gold and silver, if they had it, they would keep it and use it. If they didn't have it, they would never force it. As for the position of an official, since the commander-in-chief was one of their own, they didn't need to worry about encountering that kind of brainless general, so it didn't matter. Therefore, they cared more about the lives of their own family members and the soldiers at the border. They hoped that everyone would be able to live well. But even if it was like this, they wouldn't stop their own children from going to the border. Because that was their mission. As long as they didn't lose an arm or a leg, and weren't so old that they couldn't move, they would persevere. However, the He family was indeed grateful to Jean Qin Wang, especially old Madam He and Foreign He, who were the clearest about the changes in He Hai's consciousness. At this moment, no matter what purpose Jean Qin Wang had, they would remain silent. In the future, even if Jean Qin Wang did something that they couldn't accept, they could choose not to participate, but they would acquiesce to He Hai's help. Even if He Hai had to be removed from the family, what Li Hongyuan gave to He Hai, from a certain point of view, was another life. He Hai hurriedly rushed to the northeast border town, alternating between riding 2 horses. Both horses were almost crippled from running. Fortunately, he didn't see the tragic situation that he imagined. He breathed a sigh of relief. That, perhaps Jean Qin Wang's information was wrong? However, He Hai didn't jump to conclusions. This battle could only be considered as the beginning. If there really was a mole, it was most likely that the mole would strike a heavy blow at the crucial moment. Therefore, it was too early to be reassured. He Zhenwei did not find the sudden appearance of his son strange. Instead, it was a matter of course. His son was messing around, but he truly cared about his family. If he had the ability, there was no reason for him to stay in his comfortable nest. As for the 2 strangers that He Zhenwei brought with him, he did not care about them. No matter what their background was, they were related to the capital. However, General He was too lazy to pay attention to him. When it was time to fight, he would fight. At other times, it was best for him to be well behaved. Clearly, General He's impression of his son was still the same as before he left the capital. After all, judging from He Zhihai's words and actions, he was still that little tyrant. He Zhihai didn't care. He wasn't in a hurry to get involved in the matters between the generals. He gave people a deep-rooted impression that many people avoided him, but in fact, no general saw him as a threat. If he wanted to catch a mole, it was more convenient for him to act like this. Of course, he still had to communicate with his old man to see if he already had a suspect or even confirm the other party's identity. In He Zhihai's view, to be able to cause the situation that Jean Qin Wang spoke of, it definitely wasn't an ordinary citizen, nor an ordinary soldier. Because they didn't have the ability to know the overall deployment of the Northeast Army. Moreover, there were some places that they couldn't get close to, and there were some mountain passes that they couldn't open. Therefore, the scope was actually quite small. The idle little tyrant he led the 2 people to wander around the camp. Just like before, no one felt that something was wrong. Group after group of soldiers passed by in an orderly manner. When they saw He Zhihai, they would stop and call him Little General. This was a respectful title for He Zhihai. For those generals, He Zhihai was only awe-inspiring on the battlefield, but in the end, he was still a junior. These soldiers were different. They only knew that the little general was incomparably brave and invincible. They had the deepest feelings and regarded him as the person they revered the most. It wasn't that there weren't any generals who saw this situation. Most of them were still gratified and hoped that He Zhihai would grow up and become a commander like his father. Of course, there were also people who snorted disdainfully. A child whose hair hadn't even grown out yet. He only had martial strength but no brains. They secretly sighed in their hearts. There was nothing to be afraid of. If this kind of person wanted to scheme against him, it was really too easy. He Zhihai didn't know that he had already been defined as all brawn and no brains. After circling around, the people who shouldn't be missing weren't missing, so he didn't care anymore and went to make a sand table. In fact, this kind of sand table might have already existed. It was just that it was mostly made of rice grains and loose sand, piling it up to have some meaning. Therefore, it wasn't widely spread. This time, he saw something different at Jin Qinhuang's place. It was practical, it was very necessary to make one. He Zhenwei finally had a bit of free time and called that evil creature over. As a result, without waiting for General He to say anything, little Tyrant he first rattled off a bunch of words. General He listened to his son's words and his expression was like a color palette. It was quite wonderful. In the end, his gaze became subtle and even suspected that this person wasn't his son. When He Zhihai finished speaking, he met his father's gaze and his face immediately darkened. "Old man, what's with that gaze of yours?" Little Tyrant, he who was serious for less than 3 seconds, revealed his true colors. Instead, General He breathed a sigh of relief. This was right, this was how his stupid son should be. Once again, He Zhihai's face darkened. "Want to go against your superior? Want to kill your father?" General He clenched his fist to cover his stupidity. He coughed and slightly restrained the expression on his face. Now, he knew what his Furan's letter meant. Jin Qinhuang was indeed powerful. The matter that he couldn't settle for more than 10 years was reversed by him in such a short time. It was even beginning to show results. It was just that, at the same time, he was gratified and a bit sour. These things should be put aside for the time being. First, they should exchange information to determine what to do next. Although He Zhihai had basically said what he wanted to say, General He was a bit absent-minded at the beginning and didn't hear very clearly. After hearing it again, his expression became serious. Although he had received Jin Qinhuang's reminder, he didn't think of the matter as serious. Now, it was different. The Northeast Army was destroyed and the He family was only left with a few kittens. What kind of concept was that? Just thinking about that scene, General He completely couldn't control himself. The negative emotions that had been infected by the battlefield completely erupted at this moment. It was as if there were tens of thousands of wandering souls wandering around him. It was frightening and terrifying. A general success was built on tens of thousands of bones. It definitely wasn't a joke. At this time, He Zhihai's eldest brother came in through the curtain of the tent. Seeing this scene, he was startled. "Dad, what happened?" Although his father was a military general, as long as he didn't go to the battlefield, he could basically be called a scholarly general. It was rare that he couldn't control his emotions. This was the first time he saw it. He Zhihai's elder brother was much more handsome compared to him, this little overlord. However, he was the #1 fierce general under He Zhihai in the Northeast Army. Moreover, his prestige was also quite high. He was General He's successor that everyone expected. He walked to He Zhihai's side. "Little brother, did you make Dad angry again?" He Zhihai's gaze was cold as he glanced at him. "In your eyes, Xiao Yi, is this unreliable?" Elder brother, he wanted to laugh, but because of General He's situation, he didn't laugh in the end. Fortunately, General He quickly controlled himself. "Boss, you came at the right time. Let's discuss this matter together. You guys can talk slowly. I'm leaving first." He Zhihai vowed to maintain his brainless image to the end. General He also knew that it was best for this evil creature to pay attention to this matter. Thus, he waved his hand like he was swatting a fly. Before He Zhihai walked out of the camp, he saw the smoke signal in the distance. "Enemy attack! Enemy attack!" In the blink of an eye, the entire camp moved. The people in all the tents rushed out at their fastest speed and quickly gathered. What came one after another were the shouts of, "Hurry, hurry, hurry." He Zhihai immediately rushed to the horse pen and pulled out his other warhorse. The person in charge of raising the horse quickly put on the saddle and other things. It was said that He Zhihai had the intuition of a wild beast. It was equally applicable to his own warhorse. Whether his own horse was good or not, he would know after a casual walk. Therefore, it was absolutely impossible to do anything to He Jihai's horse. A battle thus began. On the battlefield, shouts of killing shook the sky. Blood flowed freely. He Jihai was still that invincible, crazy devil king, and the people behind him were always the fiercest and most active on the battlefield. Their blood seemed to be burning together with He Jihai. However, if someone took a moment to take a look, they would find that He Jihai had already used his brain to kill the enemy. He would no longer blindly charge forward without any care. He would also pay attention to the battle situation. There was no other way. This was deliberately trained by Jin Qinhuang. No matter how crazy he was, it seemed that there was always a thread holding him together. Whenever there was a gap, he would subconsciously think. He Jihai himself was also aware of this point. He wiped his face. He couldn't play as fast as he wanted anymore. How miserable! This battle lasted for more than 4 shurchen. In the end, they were still unable to win and had to retreat. Although Qi Yuan won, the number of casualties was not small. Those were all human lives. The soldiers tiredly cleaned up the battlefield. Perhaps they were already numb. Even if they dragged along their brothers who had their arms around each other's shoulders, they were completely unable to cry. He Jihai's body was excited, but his spirit was similarly not feeling well. Just from this battle, he could clearly feel that it was different from the past. Moreover, after this battle, he wouldn't have suffered this kind of injury in the past year. This kind of situation, no matter who saw it, would not feel good. He Jihai wanted to go find his old man. However, at this time, he was most likely discussing matters with the other generals. He could only sullenly endure it. At one point, he wanted to bring people to kill them. In the end, he still had his reason and didn't do anything stupid. His elder brother came to find him. What's wrong? Are you unhappy? Big brother, why did you come? He Jihai asked in a muffled voice. I knew that you would be unhappy. Pa let me come to see you. He Jihai glanced at him. Do you think that I'm still 12 or 13 years old? If I'm unhappy, you bring people to kill them. Big brother, he smiled good-naturedly. Looking at his younger brother who was still young but already a little taller than him, it's good that you know your limits. Looking at the mottled battlefield, the trampled mud, the sporadic black and red snow, at this time, snowflakes floated in the sky. Looking at this situation, it wouldn't be long before everything would be covered again. Actually, the situation is already not bad. If we encountered this kind of situation in the past few years, the damage would increase by at least 50%. Can that little thing from the imperial court have such a big effect? That little thing from the imperial court is naturally far from enough. That little thing is just a cover. It's Jin Qinhuang. He Jihai stared blankly, as if he didn't dare to believe it. If he originally revered Jin Qinhuang because of the other's military strength, then now, it had risen to a completely unimaginable height. It's not an exaggeration to say that Jin Qinhuang single-handedly saved the Northeast Army. The He family is loyal to the monarch and doesn't participate in the struggle for the throne between the princes. But this time, it's different. We owe too much. Jin Qinhuang is simply an open conspiracy within an open conspiracy. If he has a request, we simply can't refuse. Regarding this matter, Father hasn't written a letter to Mother and Grandmother to know because he doesn't know how to write it. Originally, it was just me. Now, it's the entire He family? He Jihai said indifferently. Xiao Hai has indeed grown up. Big brother, he was quite gratified. He Jihai snorted. It's not that I want to say this, but in my opinion, there's no difference between being loyal to the monarch and being loyal to Jin Qinhuang. Big brother, he was startled. Xiao Hai, you mean? I didn't say anything. It's just that the facts are in front of us. Only by catching the traitor will we not let down our expectations. Big brother, he nodded. Regarding this matter, they stopped here. Speaking of which, I don't know what's wrong with the tribes of Mount True Nu. They've gathered so many soldiers. It makes people wonder if there's only the old, the weak, the sick, and the disabled left in their tribe. It's a pity that the weather is too cold and the terrain doesn't allow for that. Otherwise, we would have taken a detour to their nest and taken them out in one fell swoop. No matter how valiant they are, they'll be useless. He Zhihai responded indifferently. His thoughts had already drifted to God knows where. However, regarding the matter of saving people, Li Hongyuan was really wronged. The He family was measuring the heart of a gentleman with the heart of a villain. Li Hongyuan wanted the throne, but he didn't pay attention to the soldiers guarding the borders and the various prefectures. In essence, he just wanted to protect He Zhihai and reduce the losses at the northeast border of Qiyuan. Everything else was secondary. Moreover, it was already the end of the 12th lunar month. Originally, the imperial brush should have been sealed when he turned 23. Lu Qingdi should have been able to relax. However, because of the war in the northeast, he didn't dare to seal the imperial brush and delayed it until he was 27 or 28. Speaking of which, Lu Qingdi was indeed in a tragedy this year. He didn't go to the summer and couldn't rest in the winter. However, as the boss, if he didn't rest, his subordinates definitely had to accompany him. Fortunately, Lu Qingdi didn't go so far as to not rest during the 2 days of the new year. The courtiers also heaved a sigh of relief. Lu Qingdi worked hard, but they didn't have it easy either. It could even be said that they didn't fall behind. However, no matter how busy the imperial court was or how chaotic the war at the border was, it didn't affect the majority of the people in the capital. They did what they needed to do, whether it was indulging in a life of luxury or peace. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/98199597. HTML Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version reading website bicken.com. Chapter 446. The first year she spent the new year in her husband's home, and also the first year she was the head of the household. The gifts that Jing Wan sent back to her maternal home were so generous that she herself was a little embarrassed. If it was another family, they might think that she was emptying her husband's home to fill her maternal home. Who knows how they would arrange her? Of course, if it was another family, Jing Wan would never do such a thing. However, in fact, Li Hongyuan didn't take it seriously at all. He even reminded Jing Wan what she could add. Jing Wan was speechless when she heard it. A certain person was clearly the master who never prepared gifts. He was purely blindly directing. If she listened to him, she didn't know what would happen. Jing Wan let him stay where he was comfortable, as long as he didn't mind her emptying the storehouse. Li Hongyuan leaned on one side, supporting his head with one hand, incomparably comfortable. If you want to empty the storehouse of Jin Wangfu, Wan still needs a bit of effort, but also a bit of courage and guts. After all, there are a lot of things bestowed by the emperor inside. You're doing it on purpose, aren't you? Jing Wan glared at him. Absolutely not. This husband is just thinking, Wan can convert the things inside and fill it with other things. Then there's no problem at all. Li Hongyuan had a bit of a smile. Jing Wan thought that he was asking for praise. Then, Jing Wan wanted to give him a slap. No problem. The problem was even bigger, okay? Any one of the things in the storehouse was priceless. If converted to other things, who knows how many mountains it would be piled up. It could bury the Luo family's residence and definitely create a scene in the capital. Then wait for the one on the throne to invite her and the Luo family to have tea. Even so, when the Luo family received the gifts, they were still speechless for a while. Originally, Madame Luo didn't take Jingwan's gifts seriously at all and always thought that she had a sense of propriety. But this time, it was more and more excessive. Madame Luo couldn't help but sigh. If Wan goes on like this, we don't even need to run the family business anymore. With just these, we can squander away for several generations. Luo Peishan was drinking tea at the side. When the second and third Yatta comes back, you should tell her. Even if Jin Qinhuang doesn't care, the Luo family cannot be raised to be lazy, thinking of reaping without sowing and taking the third Yatu to raise them as a matter of course. Our Luo family doesn't need to think about how many generations of glory, what glory to our ancestors. We can just go back and eat until our mountains are empty, and then wait for death. Old Madame Luo smiled. Things aren't that serious. You should have some confidence in your juniors. Luo Peishon snorted. That's right. The juniors that I taught definitely won't have any problems. I'm just afraid that those who weren't taught by me will have shallow eyelids. Regarding this point, Luo Darren still had some confidence. Old Madame Luo declined to comment. Since the gifts have already been sent, there's no reason to return them. Directly send people to deliver them to each branch. Speaking of which, the gifts for the others are more or less the same as before. It's just that there's more things for the winter. Additionally, there's an extra gift for younger uncle. Younger uncle should like it. Luo Peishan specially looked at the list of gifts prepared for Luo Peisong and was a little jealous. Third Yatu treats her granduncle better than me, her grandfather. I don't see these treasures in the gifts that she gave me. Old Madame Luo rolled her eyes at him. If these things were really given to you, would you really be happy from the bottom of your heart? I'm afraid that you'll be unhappy and say that Wan is deliberately mocking you. Luo Darren smiled embarrassedly. That he was a scholar. That year, he was the Tanhua scholar and considered himself to be knowledgeable and multi-talented. Naturally, he liked the calligraphy and paintings of famous masters and most of the things that scholars liked. However, these were definitely not the things that pleased him the most. In comparison, things like flowers and plants were a notch better. It just so happened that Jingwan was very good at these things. Therefore, Luo Darren's inventory was actually quite a lot. Things were different, so it was naturally not easy to compare which one was more valuable. Comparing, in their respective fields, they naturally thought that the things that they loved were the priceless treasures. If you really like them, then tell Wan. Compared to the things that were prepared for younger uncle, Jin Qin Wang wouldn't mind giving you another set, or even better. Old Madame Luo refused to give up, and continued to ridicule him. At this time, the iron-toothed Luo Darren didn't dare to refute her back. Instead, he repeatedly begged for mercy. All kinds of lanterns were hung up and the word "Fu" was pasted everywhere. Even if all kinds of things were not going well this year, Lu Chengdi wrote more "Fu" characters. He probably wanted to use this festive occasion to suppress the previous bad luck. The Fu character that was sent to Jin Qin Wang Fu didn't even pass through Jingwan's hands before it was taken by Mu An to a certain place to paste it. It was obvious that he had been doing this for the past few years. It looked like he was pasting it in a very important place. However, Jingwan could feel the perfunctory attitude in this attitude. He completely didn't take this thing seriously. After becoming a member of the imperial family, on the night of New Year's Eve, she naturally had to enter the palace to have a reunion dinner with Lu Qingdi and the others. It would be lively, watch the fireworks, and then stay up late together to bid farewell to the old and welcome the new. Of course, before entering the palace, Jingwan, as the mistress of the household, received the frightening kowtows of the entire Wang Fu. The servants' auspicious words were thrown out as if they didn't cost money. And Jingwan had money. Everyone worked hard this year and naturally was not stingy in terms of red envelopes. Everyone received at least 3 months and at most 1 year's worth of red envelopes. The people who received the rewards were very happy. Although there were rewards in previous years, but in comparison, at that time, the Wang Fu was cold and cheerless. The masters were like this, so they, as servants, naturally couldn't be too lively. Moreover, the chief steward, Mu En, was strict and couldn't make any mistakes during the holidays. Therefore, in such a big Wang Fu, there really wasn't any festive atmosphere. Even if they wanted to kowtow to their masters, they didn't have the chance. Now that there was a Wang Fei, it was completely different. Wang Fei not only rewarded them with money, she also let the kitchen reward them with a lot of food and allowed them to have a lively family reunion. As long as they did their own things well, there was no other hindrance. For a time, the people of Jin Qin Wang Fu naturally admired Jing Wan even more. In the way of ruling, one needed to have a balance between tension and relaxation. Everyone knew this point, but there weren't many who could really do it well. Li Hongyuan was an outstanding talent, but his tension was a little special. After tidying up, Jing Wan followed Li Hongyuan into the palace. She didn't wear the gown of a Qin Wang Fei. Jing Wan was dressed in red and even used a whole set of ruby stone mask. Although she was young, there was no feeling that she couldn't suppress it. In the winter, she looked warm and cheerful. Her entire person became more and more radiant. Looking at his smiling wife, Li Hongyuan couldn't help but lean over and kiss her lips. Once wasn't enough, he kissed again until Jing Wan reached out and covered his lips. "Don't make trouble, we still have to enter the palace in a while." If they really got angry, the consequences would be unthinkable. Li Hongyuan held her hand and didn't continue. Looking at his wife, who seemed to be getting more and more beautiful, Li Hongyuan actually felt a sense of accomplishment. It should be known that the current Wan and the memory of his previous life were more and more distinct. Of course, the essence hadn't changed, which naturally made him happy. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/9863598. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Biku Gur mobile reading website bicken.com. Chapter 447. Li Hongyuan lazily leaned back in his seat, holding Jing Wan in his arms and playing with her fingers in boredom. Slender and fair, no matter how one looked at it, it was beautiful. Such a pair of hands, if it became rough and stained with blood and human lives, it would definitely be a great sin. In reality, if it was possible, no one would be willing to go to this step. But Jing Wan's current state, wasn't it also very good? Blissful, cheerful, worry-free. It must be said that every time the sisters-in-law saw Jing Wan, she was always radiant and seemed to be more dazzling each time. If one were to say that she was pretending for others to see, once or twice was still okay, but after a few more times, they would still think so. That was purely self-deceiving. Moreover, a truly good complexion, good condition, good spirit, how could it be covered with foundation? What's more, between her brows, no matter how one looked, they couldn't see the slightest bit of sadness. So to say, that fickle and beautiful living king of hell unexpectedly changed his heart after marriage and only pampered Luo Shi. This was something that no one would have thought of. However, the truth was right in front of their eyes. Of course, this kind of situation wasn't something that everyone could accept. Others were good, but they weren't. The drop in their hearts was huge. How could their hearts not be sour? Luo Shi looked like a decent person, but in private, who knows how foxy she was. Didn't you see that Jin Qin Wang, this kind of veteran flower, fell into her hands? Just like how she looked gentle and generous, but in her bones, she was jealous and vicious. As the saying goes, one may know a person for a long time without understanding their heart. This sentence could not be more appropriate when used on Luo Wang Fei. Even though the living king of hell was a bit scary, but they were women. If they weren't his sisters-in-law, then he wouldn't do anything to them. At this time, he naturally smiled as he spoke to Jing Wan. How could Jing Wan not understand the sarcasm? But she also knew what kind of mentality they had. If they didn't do anything, wouldn't it seem weak? Therefore, she smiled even more brightly. If they were unhappy with her, Jing Wan could naturally refute them back. If it was like nothing, it could poke their lungs until they hurt. Her husband doted on her, and there was no one else by her husband's side. So what? She was jealous and vicious, but it was clear that she lived a better and more comfortable life than these virtuous people like them. So, not only did he fail to find fault, he was so angry that he almost vomited blood. My sixth sister-in-law and my sixth uncle are in love with each other. It's a pity that it's not perfect yet. It would be great if they could have a legitimate eldest son. As the ninth princess consort spoke, she glanced at Jingwan's stomach. It's been more than half a year. Sixth sister-in-law, is there still no sign of pregnancy? Sixth uncle married late. By the time the uncles younger than him reached his age, I'm afraid they would already have a group of children. Madame Luo's reputation did not affect her. This was probably her only weakness. Speaking of this, the ninth princess consort was complacent. She had been married to the ninth prince for 2 months, but she found out that she was pregnant. Moreover, she gave birth to a boy at one go. She was quite strong-willed about this. It's fate to have a child. I heard that 2 more concubines in your mansion are pregnant. Congratulations, ninth sister-in-law, you are going to be a mother again. She had been taking contraceptive measures. It would be strange if she could get pregnant. Every time she took contraceptive pills, someone took the initiative to use them. Considering the current situation and her physical condition, Jingwan was happy to do so. The ninth princess consort's face turned pale. It was a happy thing to have a child in her belly. Anyone else would be unlucky and unhappy. There was another person who had no confidence in the matter of children, and that was Princess Ruei. At present, there were still only 2 girls in Prince Ruei's mansion, and they were Princess Ruei's children. However, girls were not included in the list of children. Prince Ruei was the most virtuous among them. However, there were many people who talked about him behind his back. He acted so well on the surface, but no one knew how vicious he was in the backyard of Prince Ruei's mansion. Therefore, regardless of other things, a child was a woman's Achilles' heel. While these women were talking, the men gathered in another corner. They could faintly hear their conversation, so the topic naturally turned to this. The Gong Prince glanced at Li Hongyuan. Thinking about how he was not polite at the birthday banquet, he really did not dare to provoke him again. So he pointed the spearhead at Prince Ruei. Third brother, it seems that there hasn't been any good news in your mansion for more than a year. Among us brothers, besides sixth brother, you are the only one who is married. You shouldn't be too busy and neglect third sister-in-law and the other people in your backyard. In any case, you have nothing to do recently, so you should hurry up and give birth to 2 little nephews. It doesn't matter whether they are legitimate children or concubines. When the time comes, Imperial Father and Imperial Concubine Yongyang will be happy, don't you think so? The speaker didn't mean it, but the listener did. Prince Ruei's complexion was slightly unsightly. How to say it, although he wasn't a greedy person, the frequency of him going to the backyard was still the same as before. Moreover, the mansion had indeed been quiet for a long time. It was reasonable to say that it shouldn't be like this. Originally, he didn't care that much about having children. It wasn't like he couldn't have children. Once he succeeded, he could have as many children as he wanted. However, seeing his other brother's sons being born one after another, he still subconsciously became anxious. Now that there had been no news for such a long time, he didn't care at all. It was definitely fake. Li Hongyuan acted as if he didn't hear. Some people, sometimes, were simply blessed by the gods. After that, the princes and princesses who were still in the palace arrived one after another. The concubines also appeared one after another. Qin Shufei's spirit seemed to be quite good. After all, it had been more than a month since she was poisoned. However, Imperial Concubine Su's expression was somewhat listless. The foundation on her face was very thick. Jingwan always felt that Imperial Concubine Su seemed to have aged a lot. The crow's feet at the corners of her eyes couldn't be hidden anymore. Imperial Concubine Wei was still okay. After the people of the former Wei left, the Imperial Household Department did indeed embezzle some of her money. However, the former Wei quickly sent Imperial Concubine Wei's dowry. It was very generous. In fact, these were all fought for by the former Wei eldest prince. After all, the 2 of them had a deal. Imperial Concubine Wei said that if she didn't live well, who knew what she would do? In any case, the former Wei eldest prince managed to smooth over the matter of Imperial Concubine Wei staying in the Qi Yuan. Then, he wantonly fought for imperial concubine Wei's dowry and fiercely played the good name of good brother. The former Wei eldest prince had a lot of dirt on the former Wei crown prince. In addition, the former Wei fifth prince began to jump up and down, secretly wanting to fight for the throne. He caused all kinds of trouble for the crown prince and also stirred up the water in the capital of the former Wei. The former Wei was not calm at all. Finally, there was the empress. No matter what, she looked a lot thinner. She had suffered a lot. Lu Qingdi arrived late and was not in a good mood. He was really above millions of people. He alone could affect everyone's mood. Thus, because of his arrival, the scene suddenly became extremely quiet. What? I am a scourge. When I come, all of you are mute. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/9975124. HTML Please click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. Chapter 448. This wasn't easy to answer. Anything could be wrong. Of course, there were some people who were completely unaffected and didn't care at all, such as Li Hongyuan and Jing Wan. They were in this situation. In fact, they really wanted to coax Lu Qingdi into becoming an emperor, but unfortunately, this husband and wife pair, one was unintentional and the other was unintentional. And the others couldn't coax him even if they wanted to. Lu Qingdi was so angry that he couldn't help but want to choke this group of unfilial sons to death. However, this group of unfilial sons didn't do anything. At most they just scolded a few words. He couldn't punish them for no reason just because he was in a bad mood. Then he would be no different from an incapable ruler. Not to mention other things, those ministers should have opinions about him. The New Year's Eve dinner that was supposed to be lively and happy directly turned into an awkward silence at the beginning. Jingwan wasn't sure if this was the first time this family was like this. In any case, after coming to this world, it was the first time she encountered this. In the past, even in Qi and Fu, even if most of the Luo family was in the capital, she, grandmother and fourth uncle could still have a comfortable and happy New Year's Eve. So, the imperial family and whatnot, sometimes it was really annoying. Jingwan felt that it was better to spend it with her own husband in the Wangfu. Even if it was just 2 people, it was definitely 100 times, 1,000 times better than now. Jingwan sat next to Li Hongyuan. On the table, there were tea and snacks, dried fruits, and a variety of other things, so she could leisurely pass the time. As for the surrounding atmosphere, it was better to just ignore it. Of course, the awkward silence wouldn't last forever. As long as Lu Qingdi didn't flip out, there would always be someone to slowly warm up the atmosphere, and then find a way to brush up a good impression in front of Lu Qingdi. Of course, they had to be extra careful tonight, otherwise they might brush up a bad impression. Almost half of the banquet was over, and the atmosphere finally returned to normal, at least on the surface. Jin Qian Wangfei is becoming more and more beautiful. Today's dress complements each other even more, bright and moving and festive. Jing Wan, who was happily eating, suddenly heard these words and felt baffled. Looking for the source of the voice, the Gong Prince's biological mother was clearly smiling, but those faint eyes clearly didn't have any good intentions. Thinking about it, the Gong Prince had been beaten miserably by Jin Qian Wang over and over again. It could be said that they had long formed a death grudge, so it wasn't surprising that someone would come looking for trouble. Jing Wan smiled nonchalantly, waiting for her opponent to make his move. Of course, the others weren't as calm, especially the Gong Prince. After all, the shadow that Jin Prince gave him was quite big, but since his own mother had already spoken, he couldn't say anything more. As for the others, they were more like watching a show. As long as it had nothing to do with them, they would be happy if others were to tear each other apart. It would be even better if both sides suffered losses, especially now that both sides were making people want to get rid of them as soon as possible. Of course, it was just a thought. It's just that Ben Gong was thinking, the soldiers at the northeast border are fighting a bloody battle. Isn't it not very good to be dressed like this? The Gong Princess Mu Fei used a handkerchief to cover her mouth, as if to hide the smile on her lips. These words really didn't beat around the bush, but the lethality was indeed a bit big. Not only that, even Lu Chengdi looked over, and the others also responded accordingly. Jingwan's mental fortitude was strong, so she wasn't the least bit moved, and even smiled. I don't know how the war in the northeast is going. These things naturally have Imperial Father and the courtiers to worry about. I personally believe that with Qi Yuan's national strength, defeating Jiannu Mountain is only a matter of time, but listening to Nyongyong's words, it seems that the war isn't going well? So much so that even the Son of Heaven has to be careful? Also, Nyongyong lives in the Imperial harem. Where did you get this information? The Gong Princess Mu Fei's face instantly lost all color. She couldn't find fault, and in a few seconds, 2 big hats were put on her head. Qi Yuan's downfall, and the Imperial harem's interference in politics, either one of these could send her to the 18th level of hell. She wasn't the Empress, nor Imperial concubine Su, nor Imperial concubine Qin Shu. She wasn't the Emperor's favorite concubine, nor did she have a strong background. She didn't need to balance any power, so if Lu Chengdi wanted to punish her, he didn't even need to think about it. How could she not be afraid? The other one who was scared to the point of breaking out in cold sweat was the Gong Prince. Although his biological mother wasn't much help to him, if something happened to her, it would be a great loss to him. Your Majesty, Imperial Father. The mother and son almost spoke at the same time, trying to remedy the situation. Enough. Lu Chengdi fiercely put down the cup, making a bang sound. He turned his head and coldly looked at the woman who had been by his side for many years, without the slightest bit of emotion. Put away your little thoughts. If there's a next time, I won't let you off lightly. The people who were about to speak instantly became mute, not daring to speak again. After all, being let off was already extremely lucky. Of course, after this incident, the atmosphere naturally became gloomy again. This kind of atmosphere was always oppressive. Some people complained that the Gong Princess Mu Fei was looking for trouble, not stopping even during the new year. She clearly knew that the Emperor was in a bad mood, clearly knew that the Emperor was biased, yet she still went up to provoke him. Not only did she lift a stone to smash her own foot, she also implicated others. This person's mentality was like this. However, some people glanced at the living king of hell. Should they be glad that this lord didn't flip out? Li Hongyuan was indeed very indifferent, as if what happened had nothing to do with him. However, when the Gong Prince inadvertently met his gaze, it was like he was being stared at by something extremely frightening. The hair on his body instantly stood on end, and a chill ran up from the soles of his feet. The Gong Prince regretted once again. Why didn't he stop his mother? The Gong Prince was definitely scared of Li Hongyuan, but because this hatred was getting deeper and deeper, he took every opportunity to fight back. Not only did he fail every time, but he also stumbled. It looked like he was about to be suppressed to the end. At this time, Jingwan poured a cup of wine and raised it to Lu Chengdi. Fu Huang, this daughter-in-law toasts you. Then she said a few auspicious words. Fu Huang is worried about state affairs, but you should also take care of your dragon body. General He's fame, even this daughter-in-law has heard of it. Fu Huang should rest assured. Perhaps tomorrow we'll be able to receive news of victory. As for other things, as the saying goes, mountains and rivers repeat, but there's no road, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Today's predicament, maybe tomorrow we'll be able to break it. The body is the capital, only when the body is healthy can we deal with those things. Moreover, perhaps, he's looking at you. Lu Chengdi stared blankly, then as if he understood, he smiled. Old Six wife is right. It's the new year, it should be lively. How come it's so cold and cheerless today? The chamberlain waiting on the side was also clever, immediately arranging dance music, and the atmosphere quickly warmed up. Li Hongyuan poured a cup of wine for himself, then poured half a cup for Jingwan. Why are you paying attention to him? Jingwan smiled. I just don't like this kind of depressing feeling. Li Hongyuan's wine cup, which had already reached his mouth, paused. That's true, in the Luo family, the atmosphere should be good. N. Jingwan didn't deny this point. Li Hongyuan shook Jingwan's hand. Endure for 1 or 2 more years. He drank a cup of wine, his tone exceptionally indifferent. In this kind of public place, only he, Li Hongyuan, would dare to say such disgraceful words. Jingwan heard the deeper meaning in his words, but didn't show it at all, admiring the beauty's dance. Li Hongyuan glanced at Jingwan, then indifferently admired the dance. Speaking of which, his wife had the ability to predict. After all, at the northeast border, today was going to be the battle that would determine the fate. According to the news, General He and the others had already determined who the traitor was, but they didn't find the traitor. Instead, they decided to beat them at their own game. Therefore, the time of the incident was still tonight. Although they wouldn't receive any good news tomorrow, if things went smoothly, it would probably be delayed for 2 or 3 days. As for the imperial noble consort's matter, it had already been arranged, and there would be a turning point tonight. At midnight, the bell on the tall tower continuously rang, and the entire sky above the capital was filled with the sound of firecrackers. The members of the imperial family had already moved out of the hall. Looking at the blazing fire and the constant crackling sounds, how many people were there? They hoped that it would really be able to reach the sky and prosper. Suddenly, the ground trembled slightly. Although it wasn't strong, and it didn't last for long, basically everyone felt it. Many people's faces immediately changed, because it felt very much like an earthquake. At midnight, the new year had just begun, and they were already playing this game. No one would be in a good mood. Lu Chengdi suppressed his anger. Go investigate. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan looked at each other without leaving a trace. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/9975125. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition Reading Website. Bicken.com. Chapter 449. Lu Chengdi's plan had come to fruition before the people living in the prince's mansion left the palace. However, the result was far beyond Lu Chengdi's expectation. It was not an earthquake, but the collapse of a mountain. It was the kind that caused a huge commotion. A huge mountain, seemed to have been split in half. After the collapse, what appeared in front of people was a stone tablet, which could also be called a heavenly book. The stone tablet was not a simple stone tablet. It was chiseled from a huge rock. Then, the general of the Shishan barracks personally brought it to Lu Chengdi. That's right, the place that collapsed could be said to be within the range of the Shishan barracks. It was less than 100 feet away from the barracks. Speaking of which, because it was New Year's Eve, although except for a few generals, the rest of the people could not go home. These people also had to celebrate the new year. Then, the side suddenly collapsed with a deafening sound. Moreover, at that time, there were a few people who were walking forward. They were less than 5 feet away. If the collapse had happened a little later, or if their speed had been a little faster, they would have undoubtedly died. Such an unforeseen event almost caused them to have a heart attack one by one. After such a thing happened, the people in the Shishan barracks naturally went to check it out immediately. Of course, the surrounding soil was loose, so they had to be extra careful. After going down, they saw the stone tablet in a conspicuous position. They didn't dare to neglect this kind of heaven's will, and reported it immediately. Then, the people sent by Lu Chengdi arrived and the stone tablet was brought to Lu Chengdi. When Lu Chengdi saw the stone tablet, he was so shocked that he couldn't speak. After a long time, "Mommy, Master Liaochen said you were not immortal. Now that I see it, it's true. But I didn't expect." There were not only words on the stone tablet, but also a fairy statue. Lu Chengdi's hand kept caressing the fairy statue. At this moment, most of the people were attracted by the stone tablet. They immediately understood the words on it. Their hearts were filled with excitement, and they couldn't hide it from their faces. However, no one cared about them at this moment. Li Hongyuan and Jing Wan were probably the only ones who could remain unmoved. The things on the stone tablet were actually very simple. It was to fabricate a beautiful identity for the imperial noble consort to come to the mortal world to experience the tribulation. It also vaguely mentioned what would happen if she was treated well and what would happen if she was treated badly. Jing Wan coldly looked at Lu Qingdi, who was completely immersed in his own world. Nothing around him could affect him. Jing Wan felt disgusted every time she saw such a scene. As far as she knew, Lu Qingdi held a portrait of Huang Guifei all day long after his birthday. But not long after, he still entered the harem and held those low-ranking but extremely delicate concubines. However, what Jing Wan was more curious about was how someone got this thing under the mountain. If it was in a deep forest or a natural cave, it would be easier to operate. Jing Wan suppressed her doubts and turned around to ask. Of course, because it appeared in such a place, no one would suspect that it was man-made. Obviously, once the stone tablet appeared, more than half of the obstacles for the establishment of the altar were cleared. Not to mention other things, even if Lu Qingdi was hysterical, he would subconsciously feel guilty about treating Huang Guifei well. Therefore, no matter what, he would definitely facilitate this matter. The next day, at this time, the news had spread all over the streets and alleys of the capital city. It happened so fast that some people did not expect it. However, the matter about the imperial noble consort was widely known. Now, how could they stop it? So they could only watch the matter become more and more serious. The negative emotions of the people were weakened little by little and moved to the other side. The Shishan barracks was an important army that guarded the capital city. There were basically 50,000 soldiers stationed there. About 100,000 soldiers were under the command of the generals. That was 200,000 soldiers who were stationed in the Shishan barracks in rotation. As long as some of these people showed up and spread false information, this matter would become a myth. In fact, it was very clear that no one died and no animals were found dead or injured. People did not think that it was a coincidence. If it was a god and not a ghost, and a god with a kind heart, many people would be willing to worship it. When the court officials and madams entered the palace to pay their New Year's greetings, they were all discussing this matter. Jing Wan listened quietly. The effect was really good. As for the stone tablet under the mountain, it turned out that it was because of the underground river. She realized that her husband really had a lot of talented people under him. All of them were very powerful. However, this matter did not stop. Instead, it reached its peak 3 days later. This was because the northeast border city reported a victory. On New Year's Eve, the tribes of Mount Jinnu launched a sneak attack on the northeast border city. In the end, General He was already prepared and fought back. He killed tens of thousands of enemies and defeated the tribes of Mount Jinnu. For the next few decades, a war of this scale would not happen in the northeast. Calculating the time, didn't it coincide with the collapse of the Shishan barracks? Her Majesty Fairy protected Qi Yuan. Although to a certain extent, she stole the limelight of the Northeast Army, she also helped the Northeast Army block some dangers. With her goal achieved, Jing Wan sat in Li Hongyuan's arms and looked at the details of the battle in the Northeast border city. https://www.beacon.com/11/11807/9975126. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.beacon.com. Beacon.com mobile reading website Beacon.com. Chapter 450. Although Jing Wan didn't know all of Li Hongyuan's arrangements, she knew most of it. General He and the others had already determined who the traitor was and planned to beat them at their own game. A big battle was unavoidable, but it should have been a sure win and the Northeast Army's losses would be minimized. However, they didn't expect an unforeseen event to occur. Because there was more than one traitor general and the two traitors were not related, they found one and didn't find anything wrong with it. Thus, they relaxed their vigilance against the others and unsurprisingly, something happened. Fortunately, He Ji-hai, this brainy killing machine, didn't become dizzy from the killing and didn't notice anything. After sensing that something was wrong, his old man and the others didn't have the time to act. He immediately led a dozen or so bodyguards and rushed back to kill the traitor general's bodyguards. No one was a match for him and in the end, he unceremoniously killed the traitor general. However, in the end, they were still a step too late. One of the city gates was broken through. Because of this, they lost nearly 10,000 soldiers of the Northeast Army. And these people accounted for more than half of the total losses of the Northeast Army in this battle. In the end, they won, and it was a beautiful victory. However, none of the generals were happy, especially General He. His face was so gloomy that it was about to drip water. More than 70% of those soldiers were veterans. Veterans represented combat strength, experience, and a greater chance of survival in war. However, so many people didn't die in the battle against the enemy, but died for the selfishness of their own people. How painful was this? However, not only could this matter not be made public, they had to do their best to cover it up, from the common people to Emperor Lu Cheng. After all, if people knew about this, the people would lose trust in the Northeast Army. This wasn't a big deal, but they were afraid that some people would use this matter to make an issue out of it and attack the entire Northeast Army for personal gain. Therefore, while the people of the northeast border city were celebrating, Emperor Lu Chang was overjoyed, and the civil and military officials were full of smiles. The general's mansion in the northeast border city was overcast with dark clouds. They were worried about those soldiers who had died in vain and how to hide this matter. The news of victory had been sent back, but how were they going to write the following memorials? A hot-tempered general slammed the table. Those two sons of the asterisk cheese, after doing such a thing, you still want to give them credit? Chopping that bastard sea of consciousness in one slash is really letting him off too lightly. If it were me, I would skin him alive, pull out his tendons, and eat him alive. His eyes looked like they were about to split open, and his eyes were filled with rage. In order to cover it up, the two of them naturally could not be exposed. The best way was naturally to sacrifice their lives for the country. However, they were clearly traitors who had betrayed the country. It was fine if they were not condemned by the public, but they were praised by the world. However, what about those soldiers who had died in vain? Because of their low status, they could not even leave behind a name. No matter how one thought about it, it was hard to reconcile. Isn't there still one locked up in the dungeon? If Uncle feels unhappy, you can go and skin him alive. He Ji-hai said indifferently as he sat on the side. This time, He Ji-hai had truly started a massacre. When the battle ended, he was completely covered in blood. There was his own blood, but more of it was the blood of the enemy. It was clearly the middle of winter, but at this moment, his upper body was bare, and he was wrapped in a bloody white cloth. The battle had ended for almost 3 days, but his entire body still carried a thick smell of blood and killing intent. He was completely different from the little overlord of the past, and it was impossible to tell that he was actually just a 16 or 17-year-old youth. Before this battle, if He Ji-hai still had the temperament of a youth, after this battle, he had completely matured. And if General He were to ask for credit for this son, he would not hesitate at all, because this son could already bear the responsibility. Cutting that kind of person, I won't dirty my hands. He Ji-hai did not care. In fact, everyone knew that it was not that he was afraid of dirtying his hands, but that he could not do it. That was his life and death, brother. He Ji-hai stood up. Great General, other than the matter of the traitor, the rest, just write it down as it is. As for the rest, there will be someone to deal with it. This general will withdraw. He cupped his fist to his old man and simply left. The people in the room were startled. After a moment, someone faintly sighed, Ji-hai has really grown up. There was gratification, but also a kind of heartache and helplessness. If they could, who would want a 16 or 17-year-old boy to grow up in such a cruel way? Thinking about those young masters of the same age in the capital, how unrestrained and carefree, how carefree and carefree. He Zhen Wei's feelings were undoubtedly the most profound, but he did not say a word. He also understood his son's meaning. After all, there were many things that Jin Qinhuang already knew. During this period of time, you have all worked hard. Go back and rest. This general will ask for credit for you. If possible, you will be transferred back to the capital, or to other counties. In the end, this place was a bitter and cold place. There was a lack of clothing and food, and the environment was vile. These people more or less had hidden injuries on their bodies. Now, some of them were in unbearable pain. When they were old, they did not know how it would be. Therefore, if there was a chance, General he still hoped that they could live a comfortable life. They all understood the great general's love and care. At this time, even an iron-blooded man could not help but feel sour in his heart. In fact, after the He family survived this disaster, the Northeast Army and the Northeast border city survived this disaster, Li Hongyuan's heart relaxed a bit. As for the following matters, he would naturally take care of it. He secretly sent a message to the people he had planted in the Northeast to bring back the person who was still alive. He still had use for him. If the Northeast Army's general could not do it, he naturally could do whatever he wanted. After the victory in the Northeast border city, the originally tense people naturally relaxed. The Imperial Gue phase matter also had a big turnaround. Lu Cheng Emperor was really happy. The court that was originally scheduled to resume on the third day was postponed without any accident. Like the previous years, after the 15th. The Son of Heaven was happy, so naturally, everyone was happy. It wasn't until the 7th day that Li Hongyuan accompanied Jingwan back to her maternal home. With such a heavy status, the Luo family's eldest aunt who married out, whether it was the previous generation or the same generation, naturally had to drag their family back, no matter what their impression of Jin Qinhuang was. In fact, although Li Hongyuan's reputation was not good, after Jingwan married him, the Luo family and the Luo family's close relatives basically did not suffer any trouble because of him. On the contrary, there were more benefits. This was something that was obvious to all. As such, it was believed that no one would not give face to him. This time, Jingwan returned to her maternal home and finally saw her granduncle Luo Peisong. It was not much different from when she was in Jiangnan. Luo Peisong expressed that he liked the things that Jingwan gave him very much. He received those expensive things and was not the least bit lenient. That's right, even if it was something that Jingwan gave, it had nothing to do with Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan naturally did not care about this kind of small matter. After a simple conversation, the men and women naturally separated and each did their own thing. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/10006215 HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition Reading Website. Bicken.com. Chapter 451. Jingwan held Luo Jingbua and Sun Yijia's daughter in her arms. Sister Xian will be 15 years old. Are you going to hold a grand celebration? Sun Yijia slowly peeled almonds, occasionally eating one, but mostly putting it on the small plate beside her. We didn't have such plans at first, but things took a turn for the worse after the New Year. Grandfather and grandmother said that if we didn't have a happy New Year, we should find other ways to make up for it. The closest one is the Lantern Festival. It's a good day for Sister Xian to be born on that day, but it's already the Lantern Festival, so it's inevitable that Sister Xian will be left out. So we're going to hold a celebration for her when she turns 14, and it'll be the same in the future. Sun Yijia looked up and smiled. I was thinking that since she's still young, it'll be too extravagant. I was worried that she won't be able to suppress her good fortune. Grandfather said that although the Luo family isn't an aristocratic family, it's still a scholarly family with 200 to 300 years of history. A girl from the Luo family shouldn't be unable to suppress this. She still has her own aunt to back her up, so what's there to be afraid of? Sun Yijia laughed mockingly at the end of her sentence. Grandfather really said that? Jingwan was also speechless. Did the strict and somewhat rigid Minister Shongshu in her impression really exist? It seemed that after coming into contact with him in the capital, he was a completely different person. Sister Wan, why don't you go and verify it yourself? Fine, all of them were amazing. Another person who completely changed her persona. She used to be the flower of high mountains, the most honorable girl in Duke Ding's residence. She was arrogant, indifferent, and the moon that everyone adored. Now, she was warm and gentle, and could even be spicy when necessary. She was very combative, and no longer the one who revolved around others. Instead, she was the one who revolved around her daughter and husband. She was willing to endure hardships and become ordinary. Although she was easy to destroy, she still gave people the feeling that she was blooming beautifully and charmingly. Although she was still a little cold to outsiders. Jingwan held Sister Xian's chubby little hand and smiled gently. This was good, wasn't it? Jingwan really couldn't imagine what would have happened if this sister-in-law and best friend of hers had married her cousin, Prince Kong. She might really wither and rot from the inside. In the end, she would definitely have an unlucky life. As for the possibility of marrying the King of Hell, Jingwan immediately threw this possibility out of her mind. This assumption was really mentally ill. She was asking for trouble. If Sister Jia really became the Jin princess consort, it had nothing to do with her. After all, she wasn't familiar with a certain someone at that time, so she naturally didn't have any thoughts about it. Even if it's not Sister Xian's birthday, Auntie will definitely prepare a big gift for her. Don't you think so, baby? Jingwan gently shook Sister Xian's small body to make her laugh. Sister Xian really loved to smile. She had a wide grin on her face and her big eyes were sparkling. She was so adorable that Jingwan couldn't help but give her a few kisses on her little face. Since you like it so much, you should give birth to one yourself. There's no rush. When the time comes, it will naturally be born. Moreover, other people's little treasures are little cuties. If it's your own, it's a little devil. It's early. Hugging her occasionally and watching over her all the time were two completely different things. Jingwan felt that she was still too young and did not want to suffer so early. Sun Yijia also guessed some things, but it's just that there are some people that you might not be able to explain. It's okay, I can handle it. If I can't handle it, I'll close the door and release the King of Hell. Jingwan laughed. You are, after marrying someone, you're becoming more and more improper and less dignified. Originally, she had a lot of opinions about Jin Qinhuang, but seeing how he treated Jingwan, she changed her opinion a lot. However, it was absolutely impossible for her to change her bad impression of Li Hongyuan into a good one. Such a good Sister Wan, no man could be absolutely compatible with her. Sun Yijia had never thought about what would happen if she married Jin Qinhuang. She didn't even have the slightest assumption. If she was asked about the changes in Jin Qinhuang after he got married, whether he regretted it or not, Sun Yijia might just roll her eyes. There were many things that Sun Yijia could see very clearly. Even if Jin Qinhuang was good to Sister Wan, he might not be good to other people. If it was anyone else, it was the same logic. Some people saw that other women were doted on by their husbands in every possible way. They would be envious and jealous. They would want to get involved and get that doting. But they didn't think about it. If that man changed, he would change twice. Would you still get the same doting that made people envious? Besides, from the beginning, Sun Yijia only had one person in her heart. She was very satisfied with her current life. As for the fight for the throne, it might involve the Luo family and destroy this peace. She didn't know when it started, but Sun Yijia was no longer worried about this. Jingwan asked about the situation of the other people in the Luo family. Of course, it was mainly the people of the second branch. After all, the last time she went back to the Luo family, everyone was together. There were many people, so she didn't ask about the specifics. Your third brother is still the same. Studying, painting, going out to meet friends. Sometimes, he would take me and Xian Jia out for a walk. You know his kind of person. He doesn't like to haggle over anything. He is also loyal and has many friends. As for mother, she is quite carefree. When you went to Jiangnan, she got to know 2 madams who are compatible with her. She goes out more often than before. Father doesn't go to the concubine's room anymore. Mother is more relaxed and looks younger. As for father, Sun Yijia's expression was a little subtle. He has changed a lot. You know what he was like in the past. Now, he spends all his time on official business and deals with those in the officialdom. Jingwan was silent for a moment. Her father was indeed a man of his words. For her, he walked on the path that he didn't like at all. In the past, Jingwan didn't have any objections. She didn't have the idea of hoping that her father would become a great man and raise her status. However, now that he had done this, it would be a lie to say that she wasn't moved at all. After a moment, Jingwan smiled. Grandfather is working hard now. In the future, our sister Xian can be all kinds of awe-inspiring outside, right? Jingwan deliberately misunderstood. Sun Yijia also smiled and didn't say anything. Some things were better understood by everyone. Sister-in-law, let's go to mother's place and sit together. Okay. If I keep hogging you, mother will definitely be jealous. She might even have a problem with me. Jingwan was helpless about this. There was no other way. She wasn't close to her mother and they didn't have a common language. They couldn't stay together for long. It was easy to have an awkward silence. Therefore, it would be much better to find a good time and find someone to ease the tension. Sun Yijia covered her mouth and laughed. Even so, it was better than the relationship between her and her mother that existed for benefits. Madame Zhang was looking forward to the stars and the moon at Luo Mei House. When she saw her daughter and daughter-in-law coming hand in hand, she immediately beamed with joy. The meeting this time was much better than expected. Then, when it was time to leave Luo Mei House for lunch, Jingwan said when she saw the courtyard full of plum blossoms, "Mother, let father cut a bouquet of plum blossoms for me and send it to the prince's mansion later." "Okay, your father will cut it for you personally," Madame Zhang said with a smile. Right now, Madame Zhang was really satisfied with everything. Jingwan saw that Jin Qinhuang's complexion was a little dark. It was obvious that he was in a bad mood. The surrounding men were carefully and fearfully accompanying him, fearing that the King of Hell would flip out if something went wrong. Jingwan acted as if she didn't see it and smiled as she greeted Wang Yi. Li Hongyuan looked at her coldly. Just from his eyes, it seemed that the coldness could be felt. People couldn't help but sweat for Jingwan, fearing that Jin Qinhuang would vent his anger on her. Jingwan wasn't afraid at all. However, it wasn't good to pacify him now. With so many people, it wouldn't be good if they were too intimate. Fortunately, the King of Hell's lunacy generally wouldn't act up in front of outsiders. After lunch, Jingwan stayed by old Madame Luo's side. The grandmother and grandson talked about intimate things. Not long after, Lu Cheng Emperor summoned Jin Qinhuang. Jingwan also left with him. In any case, she would come back on the 14th, so there was no need to rush to say everything today. In the first month, there wasn't much to do. Jingwan was naturally more idle. Out of boredom, she stroked the tiger cub. After raising it for more than a month, it was basically mature. The tiger cub had also grown bigger. However, if she continued to raise it like this, Jingwan was 100% sure that when the tiger grew up, it would only become a domestic pet. It was impossible for it to return to the mountains and forests. Li Hongyuan lifted the curtain and entered the room. He saw Jingwan leisurely holding a ball of white stuff. There was another ball lying on her lap, leisurely reading a book. His eyes instantly darkened. He stepped forward, picked up the cub's nape and threw it out. The other cub saw this and quickly jumped down and ran away. Jingwan put down the book and looked up at him. She wanted to say that he should be gentle with the tiger cub, but in a flash, she wisely chose to shut up. She got up and straightened her collar. "Why are you back so soon?" "What, you don't want to see Ben Wong?" Jingwan wanted to cry in justice. "What are you talking about? I just felt that it was a bit strange." "Ah." The King of Hell sneered and grabbed Jingwan's wrist. "Someone come, carry the water, Ben Wong wants to take a bath." With a bit of force, he brought Jingwan into the clean room. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/100320099 HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Biku Gur mobile reading website bicken.com. Chapter 452. Was it really a bath? He was clearly having an attack. His illness had clearly improved, but who touched his sensitive nerves today? Jingwan felt like she wanted to hit someone. She didn't do anything, but she subconsciously rubbed her small waist. She wanted to cry but had no tears to shed. In order to let someone be a little protective of the fairer sex, Jingwan felt that it was better for her to be more obedient and take the initiative. It was just that when the living King of Hell was crazy, he was completely unreasonable. You could pick the bones out of an egg. To put it bluntly, whatever you did was wrong. As the saying went, if you did the right thing, he would have no reason to cause trouble. Jingwan wanted to take off her clothes, and he tore them savagely. She wanted to step into the bathtub, and he picked her up and threw her in. She obediently leaned against him, and he gave her a thorough wash, as if there was something dirty on her body. Jingwan couldn't bear it anymore and flipped out. If it weren't for the fact that he was her man and that he was having an attack, she would have slapped him to the sky and let him stand side by side with the sun. What a pity, this kind of thing could only be thought of. Even so, the living King of Hell was still unmoved. This kind of person who was unmoved by force or persuasion was the most difficult to deal with. Jingwan couldn't really get angry with him, so in the end, she could only helplessly approach him. While stroking his strong waist, she asked, "What's wrong with you today? Can you tell me directly? Can you tell me directly? You're making me uncomfortable." Li Hongyuan's expression eased a little, but he couldn't say that he was bored in the Luo family and had no one to accompany him. Could he say that he even saw Chen Vengmin? The Chen family was Madame Luo's maiden family, so it was normal for her to come to the Luo family. Besides, Jingwan hadn't even seen Chen Jingmin's face, so she might not have thought of this person. Moreover, it was not a man to torture his wife because of this kind of thing. However, when he thought of his wife stopping him from killing people, he couldn't feel happy. Wan, don't hug those animals in the future. It's best if you don't touch them at all. If I find out about it again, I'll have them cut up and use them as fertilizer for your flowers. Wan, you like flowers and plants more than those animals, don't you think? That's right, this was one of the reasons why Li Hongyuan fell ill. So, was this the reason why he changed his usual style and didn't do it right away, but took a shower first, and a shower at that? Crazy. Jingwan didn't intend to pursue the fact that this person had been in the wrong since the Luo family. However, one could only look at the cute furry things, but not stroke their fur. What was the point of raising them? Li Hongyuan didn't give her time to think about those things. He controlled his emotions and didn't eat his wife fiercely. On the contrary, he was quite gentle. If he was too gentle, it became extraordinarily torturous. And the time was unprecedentedly long. Jingwan was completely eaten from head to toe, from the inside out. The continuous feeling made her collapse, and her tears couldn't stop at all. Someone kissed her away and chuckled at the same time, with temptation and wickedness, which made people's souls seem to tremble. In the end, Jingwan didn't move for a long time. She suspected that she had become a disabled person. When someone's mood eased, Jingwan thought that he finally knew how to control himself, which was worthy of celebration. But the fact was that someone had been upgraded to a super serious patient, which was even more abnormal, wasn't it? Li Hongyuan's negative emotions had already subsided. Although it wasn't intense, the taste was equally wonderful. Kissing Jingwan's cheek, it seemed that he still wanted to continue. However, if he continued to bully her, he was afraid that he would be swept out of the door. In the next few days, Li Hongyuan dealt with the follow-up issues in the northeast border town while staying with Jingwan in the Wangfu, living a dejected life that didn't know what day it was. Jingwan once again felt that she was really going to become a disabled person. As for whether the entire capital was truly peaceful or surging with undercurrents, it seemed to have nothing to do with them. However, no matter what happened, after the 15th day of the Lantern Festival, when the court reopened, what should be revealed would definitely be revealed. Jingwan said that she wanted to prepare a big gift for Xianjie. The weight would definitely be 10%. A family with a real family background would start to accumulate dowry from the moment their family's daughter was born. Although Sun Yijia's own family background was very rich, after all, Jin Wangfu was only a hare from 9 oxen. Jingwan didn't mind helping to accumulate it at all. In any case, no matter how rich it was, in the future, her uncle would support her. When she reached her husband's family, they could forget about scheming against her. However, in order to not let her own little niece be too ostentatious, the things that Jingwan chose, other than being several times thicker on the surface, there was no other way. The gifts that Jin Wangfu gave before were placed there. If it suddenly became too thin, then it would be abnormal. The truly good things were all kept in private, not ostentatious and not conspicuous. Don't look at how a lot of things were sent to the Luo family before the new year, but if one were to carefully calculate, there wasn't anything that was truly eye-catching. Jingwan still had the most basic sense of propriety. Even so, she was still warned by her own grandparents. However, thinking about it carefully, the amount of money in her hands now compared to the situation in the Luo family before, that seemed to be a bit too extravagant. However, the wealth of Jin Wangfu was placed there. Although outsiders didn't know how much it was, Li Hongyuan was recognized as the wealthiest person in the entire capital other than the emperor. This gift was too little and didn't match his status. It definitely wouldn't do. Even before Jingwan married in, Li Hongyuan didn't care about the gift at all. It was only Mu Gonggong, who was the steward of the Wangfu, who intentionally prepared a gift for the other Wangfu. Now that there was a Wang Fei in charge, it was impossible for it to be like this. Moreover, the precedent of sending gifts to the Luo family was set. Other families definitely couldn't continue to be so stingy. Otherwise, Jingwan would be blatantly subsidizing her maternal family. Most women who always thought of their maternal family would at most be criticized by others, and outsiders couldn't do anything about it. But for a Wang Fei who only thought of her maternal family, the problem was big. The congratulatory gift from Jin Wangfu was sent to the Luo family on the 13th day of the first month. Originally, when they saw the things on the gift list, Sun Yijia and Luo Jingbua were very helpless. They knew that this younger sister was now rich and should at least take it easy. However, when they were organizing the things, they saw the things that weren't on the gift list and were completely speechless. It was just 4 small boxes. Among all the things that were present, it wasn't eye-catching, but its value was more than 100 times more than the other things. The husband and wife looked at each other. Luo Jingbua sighed. "You know, Xiaomei, there's absolutely no possibility of returning it. Let Xianjie keep it. According to the current situation, when Xianjie grows up, this dowry, we probably only need to prepare some furniture." When she came back a few days ago, Zumu already told her. Now, it's good. On the surface, she didn't restrain herself much, but in private, she's doing more and more. It's better to do what's on the surface. At the very least, she still has a sense of propriety. Sun Yijia's mood wasn't much different from Luo Jingbua's. In the end, she could only slowly put away the things. If it was some other people, they would be very happy. They couldn't wait to have more, and more. It would be good if they could take all the wealth of Jin Wangfu for themselves. However, for this kind of person, no matter how rich Jingwan was, she would still be stingy. This time, for his great-granddaughter's first birthday, Luo Peishan could be said to be a big banquet. He didn't feel that it was inappropriate at all. To be honest, even if it was his own birthday, Luo Shongshu had never been like this. Instead, he tried to be as low-key as possible. Now, for a younger generation, who knows how many people couldn't help but ridicule in their hearts. How much did he like this child to be like this? Even Zhang Zhong's son was far behind. So, Shongshu Darren liked female dolls more? Although Jingwan knew that it was going to be held, but this level of grandeur was still somewhat unexpected. Wasn't it a bit too much? Li Hongyuan didn't care, it's just a younger generation's birthday, why bother so much? Jingwan thought about it and felt relieved. For grandfather to do this, his heart should be clear. It's just that, eldest brother and eldest sister-in-law will have a knot in their heart. Their eldest son turned 1 last year, and it seems that they only invited relatives and friends. It's much worse than this time. So what? Now your grandparents are in charge of the Luo family. Even if they are unhappy, they can only hold it in. They can't show the slightest dissatisfaction on their faces. Even if your grandparents die in the future, and your eldest uncle becomes the head of the family, the second branch of the Luo family will be separated, and it will be even less of a hindrance. On the contrary, they will be more attentive. After all, you are from the second branch. For your sake, even if your father and brothers are useless, as long as they don't do evil, they will definitely be rich and idle for the rest of their lives. In fact, they are not so incompetent, so it's destined that at least in the next few decades, your branch will be the most prosperous in the whole Luo family. As long as there is nothing wrong with your brain, you should know what to do. Your uncle and eldest cousin brother are not stupid people. So, Wan, you think too much. Li Hongyuan reached out and gently rubbed Jingwan's cheek with the back of his fingers. Wan, if you have the time to think about other people's feelings, why don't you think about me more? Jingwan really had to hand it to him for being able to bring up any topic. It just so happened that the Luo family had arrived, so Jingwan naturally broke away from this atmosphere that was becoming more and more strange. In order to participate in Sister Xian's week of catching, Jingwan came relatively early. At this time, those who had arrived were basically the Luo family's relatives and friends. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan had arrived, so the catching could begin. Speaking of which, they were waiting for Jingwan and the others. Once they arrived, they could naturally begin. The things to be used for the catching had long been prepared. Books, brushes, rulers, abacus, scissors, copper coins, rouge boxes, chopsticks, spoons, small toys, herbs, rags and so on. On the cushions on the square table, there were dozens of different kinds of things. Looking at the bright red Sister Xian, Jingwan reached out and pinched her small hand. Sister Xian was also someone who was not shy with strangers. When she saw Jingwan, she fluttered and wanted to call out. Jingwan carried her over and the little girl danced and giggled. Then her gaze fell on Jin Qinwang who was at the side. Her black and bright eyes seemed to cast a trace of curiosity. Li Hongyuan reached out and touched her white and chubby little hand. Then Sister Xian seized the opportunity to grab his finger and subconsciously wanted to stuff it into her mouth. Li Hongyuan used a little bit of skill to make the little girl's action fall short. Jingwan's eyes flashed and a little mischievously stuffed Sister Xian into Li Hongyuan's arms. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan and slightly raised his eyebrows. Li Hongyuan's reputation was really too deeply rooted in people's hearts. So much so that the bystanders who looked at him became nervous, as if they were worried that he would get angry at a baby. Sun Yijia also could not help but worry and wanted to carry the child back. Who knew that Li Hongyuan actually reached out and caught the child? Moreover, his posture was very correct, not at all like he had never carried a child before. It made people unable to help but feel strange. Jin Qinwang did not look like someone who had done this kind of thing before. Who exactly had the honor to be carried by the living king of hell, and definitely not just once. Sun Yijia and the others could still remember that not long after Sister Xian was born, Li Hongyuan carried Sister Xian for the first time and paralyzed her on his lap. No matter how they looked at it, it was very dangerous. In this nearly 1 year, what exactly happened? Who did the living king of hell carry? Naturally, it was his son from his previous life. When that child was young, he carried quite a few times. Jingwan's heart was similarly astonished. She looked at Li Hongyuan with a little curiosity. Li Hongyuan saw this in his eyes and did not say anything. He casually placed Sister Xian on the table. Let's start. Since this lord had spoken, naturally there was no need to delay anymore. Whether it was Sun Yijia or Luo Jingbua, they did not have high expectations for Sister Xian. They only hoped that she would live a safe and prosperous life. Therefore, they did not train her in advance. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/10139910. HTML chapter error. Please click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition Reading Website. Bicken.com. Chapter 453. Add this. Li Hongyuan casually threw his personal seal over. Everyone's faces once again changed into a strange color. That, Jin Wangye, did you forget that Xian Jie is a girl, do you understand? A little girl catching Zhou Yong's seal. What's the meaning of that? Even if she caught it, what could she do? She, a girl, can be successful in her official career? Moreover, it's a Wangye's personal seal. What, in the future, there will be a female Wangye with a different surname? I know that your temperament is treacherous and unreliable, but in this kind of situation, can you restrain yourself a little? In any case, this is your in-law's family, If you want to cause trouble in other places, then forget it. Jingwan was also slightly speechless for a moment, but it was fleeting. Her eyes flashed. Why can't a girl step into the officialdom? Other things aside, if Xian Jie really had this kind of idea in the future, with this kind of ability, the person with the highest authority would be this person beside her. If his feelings towards her were still the same, she believed that based on his ability to accept, he would not stop Xian Jie from walking on that path. At present, a female official was not a fantasy story. After all, a hidden gene country was there. If they were female officials, as long as they had the ability, they would be able to have the same high position as men. Something like a Wangye, she didn't think about it. Thinking of this, Jingwan's eyes even carried a trace of expectation. Li Hongyuan turned his head to look at Jingwan. As the person who shared the same pillow, no one knew better than him what she was thinking. He slightly smiled. A female official, nothing more, there was nothing he couldn't give. Looking at the others, they were non-committal. This was the so-called promotion, if one really had the ability, so what if she was a Wangye? As Sister Xian Er's parents, meeting this kind of brother-in-law was also very helpless. However, they really did not care about this matter. Who said that a girl could not use a seal to scratch the skin? From a certain point of view, they even wanted to say, well done. If they wanted to do this, they might even be criticized by others. However, if it was Jin Qinhuang, even if he had an opinion, he would also hold it in. Thinking about it like this, it was really satisfying. Looking at the other people in the Luo family, perhaps compared to others, they had relatively more opportunities to come into contact with Jin Wangye. Especially Luo Shongshu and old Madame Luo, they were very clear about Li Hongyuan's nature and their psychological endurance was also very good. A seal was really nothing. Although there was a certain meaning to it, in reality, it really didn't mean anything. And Jingwan's younger brothers and sisters of the same generation, in fact, were somewhat restless in their hearts. They also wanted to take something and throw it up. However, in the end, they didn't have the guts. If they dared to do so, no matter what the reason was, they would certainly be dealt with very miserably. Sun Yijia whispered a few words to Sister Xian. This little baby might not understand what she was saying, but she should be able to get the gist of it. Even if she didn't understand, there were so many things around her. It was normal for her to play with them out of curiosity. So what if she was playing with them? Xian Jie had indeed been attracted by those things. Sun Yijia retreated and stood together with the Luo family, quietly watching and not giving any guidance. Xian Jie touched the things here and there. Most of the things she had seen before, but they weren't rare. After playing with them for a while, she threw them to the side. This caused the people around her to have no choice but to swallow back their words whenever they wanted to say something auspicious. After doing this several times, each and every one of them calmed down and wouldn't easily open their mouth until the end. Xian Jie grabbed the small abacus and shook it loudly. She grabbed it in her small hands and didn't let go. However, it seemed that this wasn't the end. She continued to shake it and picked up a small string of copper coins. She accepted it. In the end, she grabbed Li Hongyuan's private seal. Looking left and right, she probably didn't see anything special about it and accepted it with a smile. With the toy in her hands, Xian Jie faced her mother and babbled, asking for a hug. However, some people were still immersed in the fact that she grabbed the seal. She really grabbed the seal. How did she grab the seal? It wasn't to the extent that they were greatly shocked, but they were a little unable to accept it. If it were just the first two things, needless to say, it would be that she was good at managing money. She would definitely choose a good one and praise it as much as she could for free. If it were a boy who grabbed the seal, he would inherit the fortune of the heavens and be successful in his career. Congratulations. Congratulations. You have a successor. However, this was a girl. Girls, understand. They could only live in the backyard and take care of their husbands and children. If they appeared in public, they would be criticized. Therefore, they really didn't know what to say at that moment. However, Li Hongyuan's lips curled up slightly. She's a smart child. Of course. Don't you know whose niece she is? Jingwan quite shamelessly agreed. Indeed. Li Hongyuan also very unprincipled in his approval. In any case, everyone had become mute for the time being, so they didn't mind changing for a while. Wang Fei Nyang, you have the support of the living king of hell. Whatever you say, it's fine as long as you're happy. The living king of hell pampers his wife without any principles. In any case, other people don't even have the good fortune to have a good expression. As the saying goes, comparing oneself to others will only make one angry. Who let the Luo family's daughter enter the eyes of the living king of hell? If it wasn't for the wrong occasion, Sun Yijia really wanted to roll her eyes at this couple. Because of her background, Sun Yijia definitely saw Li Hongyuan more than others. She also understood him more than others. To be honest, when she saw how he interacted with Jingwan, she once suspected that this was a fake Jin Qinwang. The difference was really too big. However, no favorable impression was just no favorable impression. No matter how much she did or said, it was still the same. With one person speaking, the others naturally wouldn't remain silent. They selectively ignored that seal and only talked about the other two things. One after another, it was very lively and the atmosphere was very good. After the celebration, time was relatively free. At this time, it was natural to chew teeth and eat some snacks to pass the time. Those who had a good relationship could also go to each branch's courtyard to admire the scenery. Not to mention other things, in any case, Falling Plum House was a good choice. Speaking of which, the celebration shouldn't have been held so early. It should have been held before the formal banquet when the guests would gather. However, the people who would come to the Luo family today were not few in status. Whether it was Luo Rongyan or Luo Jingbua, to some extent, they weren't very presentable. If they were really allowed to participate, it would really be a loss of fortune for the little girl. There was no other way. The court hadn't started yet and there weren't many people who dared to hold a banquet at this time. Therefore, there were many idle people, so naturally, there were many people who came. Because there were many people, the masters of the Luo family must go and greet the guests. Even the relatively close in-laws and great-aunts who were married out were helping out. Jingwan's current status was too high. Those who could make her personally come out were only those of the same level. Unfortunately, those people were not invited by the Luo family. This was also reasonable. Therefore, Jingwan pulled Li Hongyuan to the courtyard where she lived before she married. The layout of the courtyard was still the same as before. It was just that there was no master living in it now. Every day, the servants would leave after cleaning. Therefore, it wasn't very lively. In the winter, it was even colder. However, the earth heater was burned early today, so it wasn't cold when they entered the room. Several of Jingwan's maids were not married yet, so they were still serving by her side. When they came back again, they were naturally very familiar with it. Soon, they dealt with things and then retreated to the outer room. This kind of thing had long been accustomed to in the prince's mansion. Before the two of them got married, Li Hongyuan had frequented this courtyard many times and was rather familiar with everything here. Therefore, the two of them interacting here did not seem to be much different from when they were in the prince's mansion. They were just as relaxed. About 2 hours later. Your Highness, Prince Kong is here with a little air. Outside the door, Nanny Gong's voice was neither light nor heavy. They came uninvited? Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan and said, "Pay no attention to him." Li Hongyuan had no intention of getting up at all. Since Li Hongyuan didn't move, Jingwan naturally didn't move. Although he was a prince, he was much more restrained than before because of the Empress. Moreover, her grandfather was the minister of the Ministry of Personnel and his position was stable. As long as there was nothing wrong with his brain, he wouldn't be in a hurry to offend him. Moreover, now that Prince Rue had left the Ministry of Personnel, other ambitious princes should seize the opportunity. Even if the minister of the Ministry of Personnel was as difficult to deal with as the Prime Minister of the Cabinet, at least they couldn't be hostile to him. Therefore, there was no need to worry about any problems ahead. Prince Kong came in the name of Sun Yijia's legitimate cousin. In addition, his son missed his aunt. His reason was all right and above board. Since he had shamelessly come without an invitation, even if someone cared about it, they would just grumble in their hearts. Luo Daran wore an increasingly amiable smile as he stroked his beard and played Tai Chi with Prince Kong. If Prince Kong were to compete with him, he would definitely be played to death. Wang Ye, Prince Jin has arrived. Should this official invite him out so that the two Wang Ye can have a good chat? That is not necessary. Find that living king of hell to have a chat? He didn't want to have a stomachache. Therefore, Prince Kong also didn't want to see the living king of hell. Thus, it would be best if the two didn't interfere. However, even if they didn't meet now, when the banquet started, they would still meet. It couldn't be helped. The two had the same status, so their seats were naturally arranged together. Therefore, Prince Kong was destined to have a stomachache. Prince Kong didn't have a Wang Fei, so Jingwan was the boss of the female guests. At this time, they met people from Ding Gua Gong Fu. To be exact, they were several sisters-in-law from Sun Yijia's maternal family. Jingwan wasn't unfamiliar with these people. It had indeed been a long time since she last saw them, but they looked much better than they did at the beginning. Younger Aunt how long has it been since you went back to see grandmother and mother? One of the sisters-in-law looked at Sun Yijia and asked. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/10168892. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book. www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. Chapter 454. After Sun Yijia got married, she basically cut off contact with Ding General Manor. She had never relied on her parents' family to support her in her husband's family. If it weren't for the fact that being expelled from the family would be a hindrance to the child and the Luo family's reputation, and if it weren't for the fact that there were one or two people she really cared about in Ding General Manor, she really wanted to completely cut off contact with Ding General Manor. Indeed, Sun Yijia hadn't returned to Duke Dinggua's mansion for several months. However, every time she went back, they parted on bad terms. Old Madame Sun also asked her to live a good life in the Luo family and not get involved in the mess of Duke Dinggua's mansion. However, the one who had been ill was her mother, who gave birth to her and raised her. Although her mother had always been very utilitarian and her daughter was more of a tool, it was an indisputable fact that Sun Yijia had been well educated since she was a child. It was impossible for her to really ignore her mother. Now Ding General Manor was very chaotic. Not to mention the power struggle between the brothers, even Sun Yijia's uncles had become restless and wanted to get a share of the pie. In addition to these, the inner residence was also in a mess. The fight between women was really not much worse than that between men. It was even more insidious and vicious. Only a fool would go to that damn place from time to time to make trouble for himself. When her daughter was 1 year old, she was bullied by her parents' family. They accused her of being unfilial both openly and secretly. Sun Yijia seemed to be in a good mood now, but the premise was that her bottom line was not touched. Don't forget that Sun Yijia could slap those so-called sisters and sisters-in-law at the beginning of her disfigurement. Did they really think that she didn't dare to do it now? Sun Yijia's face was painted with delicate makeup. At this moment, she restrained her smile. Her eyes were cold and inexplicably oppressive, which made the people who provoked her feel a little scared and want to retreat. In such a scene, in addition to those who were worried, there were naturally more people who were happy to watch a good show. After all, Sun Yijia was the object of envy of many women, no matter those married young women or unmarried girls. The former Sun Yijia had a good family background, good learning skills, and good looks, so no one could be jealous of her. However, after her disfigurement, she could still marry so well. Not only did she marry well, but her husband was also devoted to her. Many women wanted to throw themselves at him, but he ignored them and stayed with such an ugly woman. What virtue did Sun Yijia have? She was Sun Yijia's ugly face. How could she still get all the benefits? As such, he was naturally happy to see her being torn apart. It would be even better if her reputation could be ruined and she was divorced by the Luo family. Unfortunately, it was probably just a thought. Third sister-in-law today. Jinggua's wife, come to my side. Before Sun Yijia could finish her words, Madame Luo's voice rang out. Sun Yijia obediently shut her mouth and retreated to Madame Luo's side, choosing to be a quiet and beautiful woman. Madame Luo leaned on her cane and sat upright. She looked at the people from Ding General Manor with neither joy nor anger, but it made people feel cold. As the saying goes, a married daughter is like spilled water. Even if you are a girl from Ding General Manor, after marrying into the Luo family, you naturally have to abide by the Luo family's rules. However, I wonder which family's married daughter goes back to her parents' home every few days? Let's not talk about other things. Let's talk about you. How many times do you go back to your parents' home in a year? If you can't do something yourself, don't blindly talk about it in other people's homes. Or is it that although you are in your husband's home, you only think about your parents' home? Today is Sister Xian's first birthday. As her aunts, it's fine that you didn't come early to participate in the celebration, but when you came, you acted as if you were ancestors and had no respect for your seniors. This old one wants to go to Ding General Manor and ask the madam of your manor where this rule came from. Ding General Manor is the Empress's family. As the Empress's niece-in-law, don't always do stupid things to tarnish her reputation and hinder her. Old Madame Luo did not hold back at all with her big hats. Sun Yijia's sisters-in-law's faces turned green and white. However, in terms of seniority, Madame Luo was a first-rank honorary madam, and they were nothing. In terms of seniority, Madame Luo and Madame Sun were of the same generation, so they were firmly suppressed. More importantly, if she really went to Ding General Manor, they would definitely be in serious trouble. Her grandmother was a vegetarian and recited Buddhist scriptures in seclusion. No matter how chaotic Ding General Manor was, she ignored it. However, if outsiders came to her, she could definitely kill them as soon as she made a move. They would not have any room to turn over. Therefore, when Madame Luo said this, they did not dare to say a word. You are a guest. Kind guests should be treated kindly, and evil guests should be driven away. You should take care of yourselves. Everyone, please take your seats. Eldest daughter-in-law, pass the word that the banquet will start. Madame Luo did not say anything else, but her meaning was quite obvious. As a married daughter, Jingwan naturally wouldn't intervene because she knew very well that such a small matter wouldn't be difficult for her grandmother. However, the daughters-in-law of Ding General Manor weren't stupid. There was no reason for them to suddenly make things difficult for her grandmother. Jingwan pondered. Could it be that something happened again? Was it some people's conspiracy? Was it purely targeting Sun Yijia? Was it to scheme against the Luo family? Or was it that the ultimate goal was Jin Qinhuang? Jingwan lowered her eyelids, blocking the darkness in the depths of her eyes. Why were there always so many people who refused to stop? https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/10229585 HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. Chapter 455. After the banquet, the people of Ding General Manor hurriedly left, which seemed even more abnormal. When she looked at Sun Yijia again, there was a trace of pity in her eyes. God was indeed fair. No matter what, there would always be something unsatisfactory. In this way, she felt more or less balanced in her heart. Others would not care about the abnormality of the people of Ding General Manor, but Jingwan would not ignore it. However, she believed that her husband could also think of what she could think of. Therefore, she did not need to do anything. Jingwan thought of another thing. At the birthday banquet, she once suspected that old Madame Sun was responsible for the resurrection. However, she did not find out anything. Therefore, the source of the resurrection was still unclear. Jingwan considered the possibility of directly starting with old Madame Sunday. Her eyes fell on Sun Yijia. Perhaps she could ask her best sister-in-law to take her little niece to see old Madame Sun? However, everyone was smart. There were some things that could be roughly understood without being explained clearly. In this way, there might be a little more exposed. No matter how close old Madame Sun was to the Empress and Prince Kong, they were still her biological daughter and grandson. If she didn't support them, she probably wouldn't do anything to harm them. Thinking about it this way, was the source of her resurrection also wrong? Also, was it wise to involve her best sister-in-law? Jingwan thought for a while. Sun Yijia noticed it. She looked back and said with a chuckle, Princess consort, what's the matter? It was obvious that her mood was not affected by those sisters-in-law. Jingwan shook her head gently. Nothing. I just thought of something and was a little absent-minded for a while. After all, there were so many guests. They still had to pay attention to what they should pay attention to. Naturally, the two of them could not be as intimate as arm in arm. Even so, they were much more casual than others. As time went by, the guests also left one after another. Those who stayed behind were basically close friends. Sun Yijia had nothing to do for the time being. She could have some time to talk with Jingwan. However, before she could go to Jingwan's side, the maid told her that her father was looking for her. Oh yes. The women of Ding General Manor left, but the men outside sat steadily. At this time, Sun Yijia knew that her father had put on the airs of a father-in-law in front of her husband. In front of so many guests, he put himself on a high pedestal. Sun Ijia felt deep hatred in her heart. A qualified father-in-law, even if his son-in-law had some problems, would privately correct him. In front of others, he would not praise or support him, but at least give him face. Of course, if he was completely unreliable, then forget it. Her husband was not perfect, but he was definitely a good man. He was filial, respectful, kind to his brothers and sisters, and cared for his wife and children. He was ambitious and had a good temper. Under normal circumstances, when meeting such a son-in-law, one would be smiling from ear to ear. However, it was obvious that her parents did not belong to this kind of normal situation. Sun Ijia went to see her father expressionlessly. Her impression of her father was 10 times or 100 times worse than her mother's. This was especially so after she married into the Luo family. With the Luo family as a comparison, this feeling was even more obvious. Her father-in-law was not a good father, nor was he a good husband. He seemed to be calm and collected, but in fact, he was more irresponsible in pursuing his own interests. Of course, this was the old him. However, in Sun Ijia's opinion, even so, he was better than her father. Moreover, now, her father-in-law was changing. He was working hard to change himself for the sake of his family. Her father was still the same. He was sinking deeper and deeper into his original path. He did not think of turning back. Or perhaps, he did not realize his mistakes at all. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. How could she have such parents? Gradually, she suppressed her anger. She was very lucky to have such parents, wasn't she? Jingwan saw Sun Ijia approaching and then walking away. Then, she knew what was going on. The High Duke's public house had been neutral for thousands of years. Should she say that this was a matter of course, in accordance with the law of prosperity and decline, or should she feel a little sad? After all, as the current Duke of Dingwa, he actually had an unshirkable responsibility for the High Duke's public house's current state. Some things and some decisions were wrong from the beginning. At this moment, there were no outsiders around Jingwan. However, there was a figure sneaking behind her. It seemed like she wanted to scare Jingwan. However, Jingwan was guarded by people around her. How could she let her have her way? After Jingwan received the hint, she turned around and smiled. "Cousin." Yuan Xiaoqiao greeted her politely. Then, she sat down beside Jingwan. Jingwan came to the Luo family to participate in Sister Xian's Catchment Week. After that, she stayed in the Haitang Inn with Li Hongyuan. She basically had no contact with other people. During the banquet, those who were close to her were not qualified to sit next to her because of the seating arrangement. Yuan Xiaoqiao came up to her at this time, but she looked tired. Yuan Xiaoqiao had always been a cheerful and lively girl. Although she restrained herself a little after getting married, she was still in high spirits every time she saw her. It was rare to see her like this. "Cousin, what's wrong?" Jingwan asked. "What's wrong? It's because of the child. We have been married for almost half a year now, but we haven't gotten pregnant. Because of grandfather and you, my mother-in-law doesn't dare to put another person into our house for the time being. But I think it will be soon. It seems that she has already chosen one from her beautiful and fertile maids." The conflict between wives and concubines, mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, was never a pleasant topic. Jingwan frowned slightly. This kind of thing could be handled, but it was also not good. To some extent, the governor's wife did not do anything wrong because many people were like this. Moreover, she was not mean to her daughter-in-law. In some aspects, she was very good to her daughter-in-law. If she came to her house just because she wanted to give her son a concubine, it would be too overbearing. It would not make sense, especially when her cousin did not have a child. Although half a year was not a long time, it was not short in some people's eyes. If she did this kind of thing within 3 months, she might be criticized. The most important thing was that Jingwan could not instill some of her thoughts into her. If she was immature, then it would be neither fish nor fowl. In that way, it might be counterproductive and make her cousin live more painfully. Moreover, she might not have the ability to bear all of this. Rather than this, it was better to let her be like other women. As long as she was alive, her husband's family would not go too far. Every era had its own characteristics. Even if there were unreasonable things, it was difficult to change with one person's strength. Especially in her current position, she could not do anything easily. Therefore, this matter was really not easy to solve. For the time being, Jingwan could only comfort her. However, it was obvious that Yuan Xiaoqiao was not so weak because her husband was still on her side. Therefore, when facing Jingwan, she could put aside her unhappiness. Cousin, how good would it be if I married cousin Jingbua? Why am I not so lucky to meet such a good husband and reasonable in-laws? Jingwan, who was in a bad mood because of her just now, choked in an instant. If you have the ability, say this in front of your cousin-in-law and see how she reacts. Yuan Xiaoqiao's expression changed. I'm just joking. I've never thought about cousin Jingbua at all. In the past, I didn't know that he was such a good man. Now, I'm just looking forward to meeting someone like him. Cousin, don't talk nonsense. If cousin-in-law really misunderstands, she will fall out with me easily. I'm afraid she will eat me alive. She looked scared. Jingwan sneered. Cousin, you still don't have a filter on your mouth. If someone heard what you said, or if they didn't hear the whole thing, they would make all kinds of speculations. Who knows how big of a mess it will cause? Yuan Xiaoqiao also knew that what she said just now was not very nice. She looked a little embarrassed. Well, you're sitting here. There are so many people around. How can you sleep and eavesdrop? You can always trust the people around you. Jingwan was also helpless. Although Yuan Xiaoqiao did not feel good, she did not dwell on this matter. Sun Yijia came back faster than expected, but she did not look too good. After sitting down, she fiercely turned off a cup of tea. Jingwan and Yuan Xiaoqiao looked at each other and did not speak. https://www.yangguiwaiwo.com/11/11807/10229586. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.yangguiwaiwo.com. Biku Gu mobile reading website: yangguiwaiwo.com. Chapter 456. Do you know why they are looking for me? They want the Luo family's support. They want me to talk to my grandfather. If I don't help them, they are heartless, unfilial, cold-blooded, and selfish. If I don't help them, they are saying that Jing Bo is heartless and unrighteous. He doesn't care about the Yu family. If he treats his own family this way, who knows how ruthless he will be when he enters the bureaucracy in the future. Sun Yijia lost control as she spoke. She was so angry that her whole body trembled. How can they be so shameless? Huh? If it was just her, Sun Yijia wouldn't be so angry. After all, it wasn't the first time. She had already given up on them. It would be best if they had nothing to do with each other. However, they were so despicable. They wanted to ruin Jing Bo's reputation and threaten her with Jing Bo's future. Sun Yijia exploded at that moment. She didn't hide her hatred anymore. At that moment, she really wanted to kill them with her own hands. How could they be her family? They were obviously her sworn enemies. Who do they think I am? God. I am just one of the granddaughters-in-law of the Minister of Personnel Affairs. Do you think I can influence the decisions of a first-rank official? Were they out of their minds or something? How can they say such idiotic things? In front of her two best friends, Sun Yijia did not restrain her emotions at all and completely vented them out. Her eyes were filled with bone-deep hatred and her expression was deranged. The beautiful makeup on her face made her look even more ferocious. The veins on her neck and the back of her hands were clearly visible. She no longer had the refined bearing of a noble lady. The emotions in Jingwan and Yuan Xiaoqiao's eyes were indescribable. The people who forced her to this extent should have been the people who cared for her the most. They should have been her most reliable support. In the end, they only hurt her time and time again. They cut her flesh and let her blood flow. They gnawed at her heart, messed up her life, and destroyed her happiness. Yuan Xiaoqiao was at a loss. She didn't know what to say. At the same time, she felt a little sad. Although the Yuan family wasn't very rich, the whole family was happy. Her parents were wholeheartedly considerate of her. Her grandfather was in a high position, and the people in the family didn't force her mother to ask for benefits from her grandfather. Although there was a little trouble in her husband's family, it was really nothing. Jingwan didn't say anything and let Sun Yijia vent her emotions first. It was best to let it out. If she kept it in, Jingwan still remembered how her sister-in-law looked like when she first met her. She was the most beautiful flower, but inside, she had already withered without any vitality. It was heartbreaking to look at her. Jingwan was very clear that although the Luo family didn't have any opinions about her sister-in-law and the elders were very good to her, if Ding General Manor kept making trouble like this, even if it wasn't her fault, gradually, they would have a bad opinion of her. This was human nature. No matter how deep the love was, it couldn't stand the torment. However, Jingwan thought more in her heart. Because her grandfather was unmoved by force and persuasion, no one could do anything to him. Sun Yijia was like an abandoned child to Ding General Manor. The relationship between the two families existed in name only. Everyone was happy and relaxed. But now Ding General Manor suddenly came to her door. What was the reason? Was it really so difficult for Prince Kang's side without the Empress? The Empress was ambitious, but she shouldn't be so weak in control. However, it was also possible that Prince Kong had been poached, and some people who originally supported him had changed sides. Duke Dinghua looked for Sun Yijia to talk to her. It did seem very stupid, but it wasn't very thorough. Because rather than threatening Sun Yijia, it was better to say that he was threatening Luo Peishan. Although Luo Jinghua was a virgin, he was now famous. No one of his peers in the whole capital could surpass him. He had a bright future and might be the backbone of the Luo family in the future. Luo Peishan naturally didn't want such a grandson to be ruined. In this way, Luo Peishan might give in to Ding General Manor. If it were another family, Sun Yijia might have been divorced, so she was the most pitiful and innocent. After venting, Sun Yijia became incomparably disheartened. Sister-in-law, don't be like this. Grandfather will solve this matter. Don't worry. Grandfather will solve it? How can I have the face to tell? Sun Yijia's voice stopped abruptly. Because of anger, hatred, and emotional loss of control, she realized that she had made such a big fuss at that time. How could it not attract the attention of her grandfather and grandmother? Now, they probably knew everything. Yes, her father didn't stop her at all at that time. He didn't use his father's identity to suppress her. He just looked a little angry. It turned out that he did it on purpose with such an idea. Sun Yijia twitched the corners of her mouth and showed an extremely ugly smile. She was even a little discouraged. So what if she was born in a noble family? Such a family, such a family. So what if she was lucky and happy? Such a family, such a family. Sooner or later, everything would be destroyed. In fact, Sun Yijia's matter could be completely solved, but it was very difficult and even impossible to do so. They didn't know how to comfort her and the atmosphere fell into silence. A maid from the Luo family hurried over. Princess Consort, third young madam, great aunt, someone from the palace said that the emperor has bestowed something. Master asked us to go to the front to receive the imperial edict. Although the maid was a little out of breath, her tone and expression were full of excitement. This news made Sun Yijia's depressed mood slightly better. The three of them looked at each other. Although it was a little strange that the emperor had bestowed something on Sister Xian's first birthday, it still made sense if they wanted to explain. When they arrived, almost everyone in the residence was present. Jingwan walked straight to Li Hongyuan, who was at the front, and squatted down. "Your Highness." Li Hongyuan, who was originally a little lazy, didn't say anything and reached out to help her up. The eunuch who came to announce the imperial edict saw this and hurriedly bowed to pay his respects. He was very respectful. Jingwan smiled faintly and nodded. Everyone was present and everyone knelt together to receive the imperial edict. From the imperial edict, it could be seen that this time, rather than saying that it was for Sister Xian, it was better to say that it was for Luo Jinghua. It made people feel baffled and unable to make sense of it. However, Jingwan and Li Hongyuan looked at each other and understood that it was because of that portrait of the imperial Gue Fei. Because of the birth of Luo Jinghua's meticulous brushwork, that painting was born. It's just that Jingwan wanted to roll her eyes. This reaction arc was a bit too long. After all, when the Yellow Emperor wanted to reward someone, he could casually find a reason. If there was no reason, there was no problem. It was up to him to be happy. Therefore, at this time, it made people feel baffled. However, since Jin Qinhuang said that it was fine and Luo Shongshu also received it as a matter of course, everyone didn't take it seriously. Only Sun Yijia had something on her mind. She felt that she had let down the elders of the Luo family, especially the head of the family, Luo Peishan. She brought trouble to him. At the same time, she was perturbed and worried that the peace and happiness of the past would be gone forever. Jingwan couldn't bear to watch anymore. She pulled on old Madame Luo's arm and gently pushed it. She pouted at Sun Yijia. "You are." Old Madame Luo was also helpless. Seeing Sun Yijia like that, she sighed and waved at her. Sun Yijia took half a beat to react. She hurriedly walked over. "Grandmother." Old Madame Luo patted her hand. "It's okay, don't think too much. Today is Sister Xian's birthday. As a mother, you have a worried face. If the child sees it, wouldn't she be affected?" Sun Yijia's tears fell and she hurriedly wiped them away with a handkerchief. "Grandmother." "Okay, you young people talk." Old Madame Luo went back to the rear courtyard. Jingwan smiled and winked at Sun Yijia. Sun Yijia didn't know how to thank Jingwan. She knew very well in her heart that the Luo family had accepted her so well from the beginning. It was all because of little sister Wan. Until now, little sister Wan had always been helping her. Let's go, let's go." Jingwan pulled Sun Yijia and went straight to the rear courtyard. Li Hongyuan watched as Jingwan left again. She had no intention of leaving the Luo family and returning to the prince's estate. He frowned, but in the end, he didn't stop her. He also knew that Jingwan had deep feelings for her maiden family. Forget it, it wasn't easy for her to come back even once. However, Jingwan wouldn't really leave Li Hongyuan alone. If she left him alone for too long, he might fall ill again. After staying for 2 hours, Jingwan went to say goodbye to old Madame Luo. Coincidentally, Madame Zhang was also there. She seemed to be talking about her younger sister's marriage. That younger sister was only 1 year younger than her. It was indeed time for her to find a husband. "Wan, you're here. Just in time, come and listen." Old Madame Luo waved at Jingwan. There were indeed a lot of people who wanted to marry Luo Jingyu. However, they were all aiming for the Luo family's power. Regardless of how Luo Jingyu was in the Luo family, they wanted to climb up the Luo family's social status first. In any case, they would have to marry a wife. With the Luo family's style, even if it was a concubine's daughter, it wouldn't be too bad. No matter how they looked at it, they wouldn't lose out. The previous candidates weren't very satisfactory. It's just that today, the Xie family wants to arrange a marriage. The Xie family? Since her grandmother directly said the Xie family, there wouldn't be a second choice aside from the aristocratic Xie family. Which son of the Xie family is it? Based on her understanding of her grandmother, she definitely wouldn't just take a fancy to the Xie family. She should have taken a fancy to the son of the Xie family who was going to marry into the Luo family. Naturally, she was curious about who the other party was. However, for such an aristocratic family to marry into the Luo family, it probably wouldn't be a very important person. Although it wasn't like the previous dynasty, the status of aristocratic families was very high. Ordinary sons of concubines had to be picky, and those sons of the first wife wouldn't marry the concubine's daughter of an official's family. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/10229587. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version reading website: www.bicken.com. Chapter 457. You know, it was Xie Hui who entered the Honglu Temple because of you. Jingwan was surprised. Then she thought about it and felt that it was reasonable. The Honglu Temple was in charge of foreign guests. Under normal circumstances, it was difficult for them to achieve much. However, when envoys from other countries came or went, the Honglu Temple would play a very important role. People who were proficient in the languages of other countries and foreign countries were indispensable. Xie Hui, from the letter of credence to the reception of the envoys from other countries, and even the friendly diplomatic relations at the end, had picked out the language traps set by some people with ulterior motives more than once. As a result, the Qi Yuan was always in an invincible position. Therefore, his contributions were not small. When the envoys left, Emperor Lu Chengdi was very happy. Then, he did not jump 3 times in a row, but 5 times in a row. There were also other rewards. Xie Hui was still not prominent in the entire officialdom. However, no one who entered the officialdom at the same time as him, including his elder brother, who was the top scholar. Xie Hui was born of a concubine, so he thought that he had the blood of a different clan. Even if his official mother did not treat him harshly, he was still a nobody in the Xie clan. But now, although he was far from being valued by the entire clan, his branch would definitely not ignore him. She did not know why he wanted to arrange a marriage for the Luo family. Jingwan asked her question. He didn't say anything specific. Besides, it was Xie Hui's official mother who asked your mother. Don't you know what kind of person your mother is? Even if other people had a deeper meaning, she would not be able to understand. Madame Luo said bluntly. Madame Zhang was ashamed. Although it was not the first time that her mother-in-law said this, she still blushed in front of her daughter. She stole a glance at Jingwan and found that Jingwan was drinking tea with her head lowered as if she did not hear anything. She then covered her ears and stole a bell. She then pulled her handkerchief and pretended to be dumb. If this marriage is successful, it's not a bad thing. There won't be any bad implications. Grandmother and mother can do as you see fit. Jingwan thought for a while and did not ask about this matter anymore. After that, Jingwan bid farewell to Madame Luo and Madame Zhang. When the imperial prince and imperial consort left, everyone in the residence naturally had to send them off respectfully. In the carriage, Jingwan told Li Hongyuan about this matter. Li Hongyuan narrowed his eyes as he looked at Jingwan. His expression was unfathomable. Facing Jingwan's puzzled gaze, he sneered. Jingwan was baffled by his crazy look. What else could it be? Xie Hui is only in his current situation because of you, the talent scout. As the saying goes, a drop of water should be repaid with a spring. Moreover, this is equivalent to the grace of a new life. Even if he spends his entire life, he won't be able to repay it. When we got married, he brought people to support you. Now, he wants to have a marriage alliance with the Luo family and marry your stepsister. What's so strange about that? Don't forget that because of you, your stepsister's reputation has been greatly affected. She has to bear the brunt of the marriage. Otherwise, your mother and the others would not have been unable to find a suitable candidate. What's so strange about him doing such a thing? Jingwan could naturally hear that something was wrong from his words. Then, Wasn't this jealousy a bit too unreasonable? However, knowing that he was unreasonable, Jingwan naturally did not lower herself to his level. Otherwise, this vinegar jar could turn into a vinegar jar in seconds. If there was more vinegar, it could drown her. Jingwan lazily leaned on him. What he thinks has nothing to do with me. As long as it doesn't have any negative impact on you and the Luo family, I naturally don't care about this kind of thing. Li Hongyuan's expression eased a little. After returning to the prince's residence, they continued to live leisurely. However, the next day, there was shocking news from Duke Dinggua's mansion. Even Li Hongyuan was speechless for a long time. It was because old Madame Sun, who had been living in seclusion, suddenly walked out of her courtyard and adopted Sun Yilin, leaving no room for discussion. And the person she adopted was the younger brother of the former Duke Dinggua, a person who died halfway before reaching the age of 20. It should be known that she had never thought of adopting a son for him, but now she adopted a grandson for him. What was even more incredible was that Sun Yijia was also adopted by Sun Yilin. That was to say, his biological father became his uncle. As his uncle, his relationship with Sun Yilin and Sun Yijia naturally became much weaker. If Duke Dinggua asked Sun Yijia to do something again, it would be completely untenable. Old Madame Sun's move could be said to be cutting the firewood from under the cauldron. She used another way to cut off a relationship with Duke Dinggua's mansion without hurting Sun Yijia and her child. There could only be one word to describe it: ruthless. Jingwan was a little stunned for a time. Sure enough, she didn't make a move, but once she made a move, it was like a thunderbolt. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/10277729. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. Chapter 458. Old Madame Sun was definitely a qualified official mother. Otherwise, how could the former Duke Ding leave so many concubine children behind? Not only that, but she also allowed them to continue to stay in the Duke's mansion and enjoy the honor of Duke Ding's mansion after the death of the former Duke Ding. It should be known that even if they were brothers, in Duke Ding's mansion, it was absolutely different from outside. Naturally, some people were not convinced by this sudden change. Then, they were beaten up by old Madame Sunday. These people probably forgot her nature and character because old Madame Sun had been eating vegetarian food and praying to Buddha for a long time and didn't have a strong sense of presence. In fact, old Madame Sun didn't mistreat those concubines' children. It was not for the sake of reputation, nor was it really virtuous and magnanimous. She just didn't care. Because she didn't care, she allowed them to exist. Therefore, at this time, she didn't care about reputation. Moreover, after the death of the head of the family, it was normal to separate the concubines' children. No one could blame her for this. Duke Ding wanted to say something, but before he could say anything, he was hit by old Madame Sun's cane. Many of his descendants were watching from the side. However, in the face of old Madame Sun's cold eyes, Duke Ding could only tremble and kneel obediently. He swallowed the words of objection that were about to come out of his mouth. Looking at his useless appearance, old Madame Sun's face became colder. Sometimes she wondered if this son and the daughter in the palace had switched genders. If this idiot was half as stupid as his sister, Duke Ding's mansion would be more than this. As for the daughter, only half was left. If she didn't have the desire for power, Duke Ding's mansion wouldn't be like this. When it came to the adoption of Sun Yilin, the happiest person was his eldest brother, Sun Yibin. The joy in his eyes couldn't be suppressed. Old Madame Sun's cane, which was taller than a person, waved again. Judging from the strength, if she hadn't died for a long time, Sun Yibin's leg would have been broken directly. "You're worse than a beast." These few cold words seemed to carry the deepest malice. The complacency in Sun Yibin's eyes disappeared completely. His face was pale, his lips trembled, and his legs went soft. He also knelt on the ground. "Grandmother, Shut up. I don't want to listen to your chatter. It's so annoying." Sun Yibin's face was extremely ugly. If his grandmother's words were spread out, his reputation would be tarnished in a very short time, and he could not wash it clean. More importantly, he could not even think about the position of the heir of Ding General Manor. Not to mention that his father was dissatisfied with him now. Even if his father still supported him as before, it would be difficult for him to get what he wanted under the pressure of his grandmother. Moreover, the relationship between His Majesty and his grandmother seemed to be unusual. He believed that his grandmother could make him lose everything with just one word in front of His Majesty. Sun Yibin's heart was filled with hatred. He couldn't care less about anything else. He only wanted to change the current situation. Old Madam Sun was old and shrewd. She saw his expression and understood it clearly in her heart. She couldn't help sneering and scolding him in her heart. Sure enough, a dog can't change its habit. He never knew how to reflect on himself. Out of sight, out of mind. Out of sight, out of mind. Old Madam Sun turned directly back to her courtyard. As soon as the courtyard door was closed, two completely different worlds were formed inside and outside the wall. The wall, which was not as high as a mountain, was like an insurmountable moat. As for the people outside, without old Madam Sun's permission, those who were kneeling did not dare to get up, and those who were standing did not dare to leave because the head of the family could not leave. The uncle who had been driven out was the best example. They did not want to leave the protection of Ding General Manor. Therefore, they were all scheming against each other a few days ago, but now they were all obedient. However, in the whole Ding General Manor, no one told Duchess Ding about the adoption of Sun Yilin and Sun Yijia. She didn't know whether it was because they had simply forgotten her or for some other reason. In fact, in the end, it wasn't that no one wanted to invite the Duchess of Ding out to make trouble for old Madam Sunday. It was well known that the Duchess of Ding cared about Sun Yilin. If she knew that her son was gone, she would really make a scene. However, no matter how much Duchess Ding did, she could be suppressed by old Madam Sun, who stood at the top. At that time, whoever invited Duchess Ding out would definitely be dealt with by old Madam Sunday. After seeing her thunderous means, this group of people naturally did not dare to stroke the tiger's whiskers. After hearing the follow-up, Jingwan couldn't help but sigh. "Ah Yuan, do you think that if old Madam Sun had set the overall direction of Duke Dinggua's mansion from the beginning, would the current situation of Duke Dinggua's mansion be completely different?" It would indeed be different, but it would be worse than it is now. In such a situation, she still worked hard for Ding General Manor, the Sun family, and even the Empress and Li Hongyi. Now the grass on her grave is deep. Because of her, she can occasionally suppress Ding General Manor. But when she is gone, Ding General Manor has no shackles at all. Moreover, Ding General Manor is a grandfather, but he is still suppressed by his mother. How can he be happy? It's obvious that the things left by old Madam Sun and the people cultivated by her will be abolished by him for various reasons. Can Ding General Manor be better in his hands? Well, her husband was very reasonable. So, old Madam Sun had seen through the situation, so she left Ding General Manor to fend for itself? Or did she really not have a good impression of Ding General Manor, didn't care, and didn't want to intervene at all? Probably only old Madam Sun herself could answer this question. Sun Yijia, who received the news, cried hard and kept shouting, "Grandmother!" She was not expelled from Ding General Manor, but she basically had nothing to do with Ding General Manor. What she once thought was impossible was achieved so easily. Sun Yijia felt that this was like a dream, but she clearly realized that this was definitely not a dream. Luo Jingbua sat next to her with Sister Xian in his arms. He didn't say anything, but in this way, he told her that they would always be by her side and support her. Their family would always be happy and happy. Seeing Sister Xian clumsily trying to wipe away her tears, Sun Yijia's heart softened. She hurriedly wiped away her tears, hugged Sister Xian in her arms, and kissed her. Her heart relaxed, but there was also a trace of pain that was hidden very deep. As for Sun Yilin, who was still thousands of miles away, there was no way to know how he would react after learning about this matter. This matter affected not only the people of Ding General Manor. It should be said that everyone related to Ding General Manor was affected. To some extent, it could be said that it was even more serious than the people of Ding General Manor. After all, there were many people in Ding General Manor who were just idlers. In essence, this actually represented old Madame Sun's attitude on certain matters. She had painstakingly cultivated the younger generation for the sake of prosperity, but now the most promising one was sent away. The meaning behind this was simply too obvious. If the old lord of Ding General Manor had such an attitude, how would the people who relied on Ding General Manor feel? It was not that no one went to Ding General Manor to ask to see old Madame Sun, hoping that she could withdraw the order before the matter became a foregone conclusion. Even some elders of the Sun family came forward, hoping to persuade her with emotion and reason. Most of them, old Madame Sun didn't give them any face at all. She didn't even meet them. As for the one or two elders who did meet her, she was also cold and indifferent. She didn't say much. She probably meant one thing: what's wrong? There were people in the Sun family whose seniority was higher than old Madame Sun's, but in the face of such a powerful old Madame Sun, they could only be silent. After all, old Madame Sun was a superior madam, and the patriarch of the Sun family was Ding General Manor. If they really wanted to argue, they might not be able to suppress her with seniority. What's more, she was the mother of the Empress. A mother's identity could really be used to suppress others with filial piety. Even the emperor had to be obedient in front of his mother. The Empress was really nothing. It was human nature to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. The actions of these people, on the contrary, sped up old Madame Sun's action. She didn't choose a good day, but directly opened the ancestral hall, worshipped the ancestors, and directly changed the family tree. In this way, the matter was completely settled. From the beginning to the end, the Empress didn't send anyone to stop this matter, and Prince Kong didn't do anything. Obviously, there was no room for recovery. The others also stopped, but it was hard to say what they thought in their hearts. However, very few people knew that the Empress's illness seemed to have worsened, and Prince Kong seemed to be irritable again. However, seeing that Lu Chengdi was also indifferent, some old officials who knew his temperament faintly felt that Lu Chengdi was actually happy to see this matter succeed. Many people were affected, more people were gloating, and more people were not affected. Li Hongyuan ordered that the investigation of old Madame Sun's matter could be suspended. Jing Wan was somewhat puzzled, but she also seemed to have a sudden realization. What Li Hongyuan cared about now was Jing Wan's birthday. On the second day of the second month, the first birthday after becoming a Qin Wang Fei. No matter what, it couldn't be perfunctory. It must be celebrated, and it must be celebrated on a grand scale. The grand celebration that Jin Qin Wang spoke of, could it be an ordinary grand celebration? When Jing Wan heard these two words, she subconsciously wanted to refuse. If it wasn't for some taboo, Jing Wan didn't doubt that he could make it more grand than the emperor's birthday celebration. But now, even if it didn't reach that level, it definitely wouldn't be that bad. If it was done, it would be flaunting his wealth again, and drawing hatred again. Jing Wan hesitated, but when she met Li Hongyuan's gaze that seemed to see through everything, and it was also cold, it was obvious that he rejected her idea. Thus, the words that were at the tip of her tongue were swallowed back. Generally, a psychopath wouldn't take her seriously. If he took her seriously, it was simply asking for her life. Therefore, if he really made up his mind, it was best not to go against him. Okay, as long as you're happy. That's right, Ah Yuan, can an E get married? https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/10319903 HTML chapter error. Click here to report, exempt from registration. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Biku Gu mobile reading website, m. bicken.com. Chapter 459. What? You want to marry one of your maids to him? Since 3 years ago, an E basically didn't go out on a mission. He just completely changed to the light. Lee Hongyuan's performance was quite straightforward. Anyway, he had a lot of people under his command. Even if it was a secret guard, it didn't have any impact if there was one less capable than E. His wife just wanted someone, how could he not give it to her? With Jiao as a precedent, it didn't matter even if his wife's maids chose husbands from the secret guards. Jingwan laughed. It's not like that. It's just that Yi's heart was moved. Because of his identity, he restrained himself and didn't show it much. When he faced the person he liked, he would still reveal a little bit of himself. Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows slightly. Obviously, he was a little surprised. The secret guards had undergone special training. Their biggest characteristics were strong ability, loyalty, and indifferent feelings. Of course, indifference didn't mean that they had no feelings. It was normal for them to suddenly have some thoughts. The person he likes also likes him? His wife was very good to the maids who served her. If it was purely his people who had thoughts, his wife probably wouldn't have asked him. Therefore, it wasn't unreasonable for the people around him to want to please the mistress. Ah, it's Bai Xiao. Bai Xiao is calm and capable. Probably because of Sister He, she's more introverted in personal feelings. I thought that she would probably be the last to understand, or that she would need me to choose a marriage for her. It's best to solve it yourself. Li Hongyuan's tone was a little cold. Jingwan naturally understood what he meant. If he wanted her to worry about them, this man would be narrow-minded again. Maybe he wouldn't treat those maids who were originally afraid of him with disdain. In his heart, he would only be satisfied if she put her mind on him at all times. If she diverted a little attention, he would be very unhappy. Jingwan vaguely knew that several of his close maids seemed to have found men for themselves. They first sent them out and then got married. In the current environment, it was shameless for an innocent girl to find a man for herself. Losing one's chastity before marriage was not tolerated. If it was known by others, she didn't know how much gossip she would have to bear. Those who couldn't bear it well might be forced to death. Jingwan couldn't imagine how wronged Si, Guo, and Fu had been at that time. Therefore, to a certain extent, being the maids of the King of Hell was definitely the most miserable among all the high officials and nobles. Therefore, after they got married, Jingwan didn't specially prepare any maids for him. In fact, Li Hongyuan's maids were more to deal with trivial matters. Now that Jingwan's maids were here, naturally, there was no need to arrange another one. Si, Guo, and Fu had not appeared in front of people before. Outsiders were used to it, so they didn't notice that Li Hongyuan actually didn't have any close maids. Otherwise, Jingwan would be criticized again. What about the others? Have they been confirmed? Li Hongyuan asked indifferently. Almost. I've already asked the nanny to deal with this matter. The agenda of the 3 letters and 6 rites still has to be carried out. The servants in the mansion don't matter. My guards are all of good background. As for the secret guards, they don't have any status at all. Li Hongyuan reminded her. Good and bad people shouldn't intermarry. If they were chosen, they still had to consider the issue of household registration. Did he still need to say this kind of thing? Even if she didn't notice, wasn't there still the nanny and the others? Jingwan glanced at Li Hongyuan. How much did he dislike the beautiful maidens by her side? After they get married, they will still serve by my side. Even if they won't be by my side all the time like before, the nanny has already trained the candidates to replace them. Now, they are already learning by their side. Jingwan couldn't help but say. Li Hongyuan glanced at her and naturally understood what she meant. The ones who will replace you now, can they have the deep friendship that you grew up with? In the future? With your husband here, you can't count on them. Don't count on them to be the same as the ones now. Jingwan almost had blood on her face. She really couldn't understand. How did a prince in a feudal society develop this kind of clingy wife temperament? If it was in hiding gold, it was possible that the wife was strong and the husband was weak. But this lord, he could kill a bunch of people in minutes. He was so overbearing and powerful that there was no limit to it. This completely didn't conform to the character's attributes. Where did it come from? Although this attribute was annoying, it was also a sweet annoyance. Jingwan was just curious, so she didn't want to get to the bottom of it. Since they wanted to celebrate Jingwan's birthday, it was natural to give instructions early. As the star of the birthday, there was no reason for her to personally handle this matter. However, the people in Jin Wangfu were all very capable. Now that Jingwan's prestige in the Wangfu had already been established, even without Li Hongyuan, they would still take out 120% of their energy to do it perfectly. What's more, Wang Ye had personally instructed that if it was done well, there would be rewards afterwards. However, if there were any mistakes, they definitely wouldn't have a good fruit to eat. With Gong Momo in charge of the overall situation and controlling the cards, Jingwan continued to be idle until she was moldy. She could only continue to paint, take care of the flowers and plants, and be lovey-dovey with Li Hongyuan. These days, it was so leisurely that it made people want to beat them. The Wangfu's invitation was also sent out early. As long as there wasn't a problem with the brain, presumably, they would leave the 2nd of February empty. If they chose to do things on that day, they would consciously advance or postpone it. After all, they could not give face to Jin Wangfu, unless they completely didn't reach this level. The Wangfu of each Wangfu would hold a birthday celebration, so it wasn't surprising to receive an invitation at this time. They just needed to prepare a congratulatory gift, and nothing else. The surreal painting that Jingwan painted for Li Hongyuan was finally completed. Perhaps she really spent too much energy on it, but in the end, it basically achieved the effect that Jingwan wanted. Although it didn't reach the level of a photograph, it was infinitely close. However, if such a painting was framed with paper, it seemed a little out of place. When Jingwan was thinking about what material to use for the picture frame, someone came to the fu from outside. Zhou Yingshuang was having a seizure, but it was a difficult labor. It seemed that things weren't going well. Zhou Yingshuang was married to the son of the Imperial College's chancellor. The Imperial College's chancellor belonged to the more noble kind. Moreover, in the Qi Yuan, his rank wasn't very high, so it wasn't easy to invite an imperial physician. Moreover, a life was at stake, so they couldn't delay it. They had no choice but to ask Jingwan for help. Jingwan became anxious all of a sudden. Without saying anything, she directly asked Muan to go to the Imperial Hospital and invite the best gynecologist and pediatrician to immediately rush to the Imperial College's chancellor's house. There shouldn't be any delay. Muan naturally knew the details of Jingwan's friends before she got married. He didn't dare to be negligent, so he took out his speed to sneak people to the Wangfu. However, it seemed that God was deliberately against Zhou Yingshuang. The two gynecologists went to the palace. It was rumored that there seemed to be good news in Emperor Lu Cheng's harem. Muan really didn't know what expression to use. He could go to other places to snatch people, but he didn't dare to go to the palace. Moreover, Lei was already an emperor at this age, but he could still have an imperial concubine pregnant. It was simply an example of the vigor of a dragon and the vigor of a tiger. It was the proof that he was still vigorous despite his old age. Muan had no choice but to rush back to Jin Qin Wangfu. Jingwan, who was originally anxious, became gloomy after learning about the situation. Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows and appeased Jingwan's anxiety. Let Gongzhou go first, at least to ensure that there won't be any accidents. I'll go to the palace. Even if something happened in the palace, Li Hongyuan could also take an imperial physician with him. Jingwan was startled. Logically speaking, her husband would never care about this kind of thing, but now, in the end, it was for her. No matter how unhappy he was because she had ideas about other people, when something really happened, he could support her 100% and help her. With a husband like this, what else could she ask for? Ah Yuan, thank you. Li Hongyuan chuckled. This husband will accept it. Remember to prepare a thank you gift when you go back. A word of thank you is far from enough. He gently pinched Jingwan's nape, hinting at something that couldn't be too obvious. Okay, I'll give whatever Ah Yuan says he wants. Li Hongyuan's expression was cold again. I don't usually see you so generous. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/10342226. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is exempted. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition Reading Website. Bicken.com. Chapter 460. On the way to the palace, Li Hongyuan already knew which concubine was pregnant. It was none other than Wei Xianfei, the former Wei's Princess Yi Ning. According to the time, it was not the first time she was pregnant, but at some time later, the two of them slept together again. It was normal for Wei Xianfei to plot against a child in order to settle down. But Lu Chengdi, who slept with the wrong person at the wrong time and lost face, should be very unhappy. Under normal circumstances, he would not sleep with the wrong person for the second time, but Lu Chengdi did. No one believed that it was a coincidence. If there was a second time, there would be a third and fourth time. As for how many times, probably only some people in the Jingshifang and some people in the harem who paid close attention to it knew. For Li Hongyuan, not to mention that Lu Chengdi now had a concubine who was pregnant, even if there were 10 or 100 more, he would not care. But it happened to be Wei Xianfei, when Lu Chengdi missed the imperial noble consort deeply. If Wan knew, she would be angry again. Many men, no matter how affectionate they were, did not prevent them from seeking pleasure with other women. Lu Chengdi was probably a typical example. He might feel ashamed and angry at the time, but after that, nothing happened. Wei Xianfei was a beauty, and she was raised to be delicate. Moreover, the first time she slept with Lu Chengdi, she was so wanton. Even if the hymen in her body was still there, she must have tasted the taste of love. She might even have been specially trained by someone. Who would do such a thing to her, a princess of the first wife? According to some of the words and deeds of the former Wei's eldest prince, one could infer a thing or two. Therefore, for a woman like Wei Xianfei, unless it was a man with a firm heart, a man who was not greedy for pleasure, or a man who was not fond of beauty, after tasting her once, it would be difficult for him not to touch her a second time. Therefore, as long as Wei Xianfei had the heart, she did not expect any favor. She just wanted to have sex with a man, which was not too difficult. Li Hongyuan entered the palace, and Lu Chengdi was still in the Iha palace. So, there was nothing to avoid. When Lu Chengdi learned that Li Hongyuan wanted to see him, he was not only surprised, but also felt somewhat guilty. Because of this, his initial joy could not help but fade a little. He hurriedly asked someone to call him in. Li Hongyuan was the first man to truly move Wei Xianfei's heart. Although it may be because of his excellent and perfect appearance, her heart was truly moved. She had already prepared herself to be a concubine, but in the end, she didn't get what she wanted. Especially since the other party had never looked at her directly. It was normal for her to hate him because of love. Under such circumstances, he suddenly stood in front of her. It was also his first time stepping into her palace. She subconsciously placed her hand on her lower abdomen. She suddenly felt the panic of betraying her beloved. She was worried that he would misunderstand. She was worried. However, all these complicated emotions disappeared the moment she saw Li Hongyuan. That man still did not see her. How she was, whether she was pregnant with someone else's child, it had nothing to do with him. The complacency of achieving her goal was gone. Only strong hatred was left. She unconsciously clenched her hand on her lower abdomen. There was also a dull pain in her abdomen, but Wei Xianfei did not feel it at all at this moment. "Old Six, why did you come to see me at this time?" Lu Chengdi acted like a monarch and a father to cover up the strangeness in his heart. Son congratulates father first. Perhaps in a few months, son will have another younger brother. Although he was a little embarrassed, he was more happy. His concubine's pregnancy was the greatest affirmation of his imperial body. It was good to be old but strong. The longer he sat on the throne, the better. However, Lu Chengdi's good mood did not last long. Because this matter would obviously make his wife unhappy, and Li Hongyuan would inevitably make his father unhappy. Therefore, those emotionless eyes stared at Lu Chengdi. Regarding the establishment of the imperial noble consort's altar, can you choose an auspicious date to start construction? This topic was completely unexpected. Lu Chengdi did not react for a while. Logically, this was not an urgent matter. There was no need to ask to see the concubine. Then, Lu Chengdi suddenly woke up, especially when his son's cold eyes swept over Wei Xianfei's belly. No matter how stupid he was, he should have understood what was going on. His Momo was still wandering in the world. Was she by his side most of the time? Then, Lu Chengdi could not help but shiver. Every time before he rolled with Wei Xianfei, it seemed that because he had looked at Momo's portrait for a long time, he could not sleep. If Momo happened to be by his side, how sad would she be? Seeing Lu Chengdi's stiff body, Li Hongyuan was like an ancient well without ripples. Because of the imperial noble consort, he was able to live again and then get what he wanted. Therefore, he wanted to protect her. However, her emotional problems were not within his consideration at all. What kind of entanglement she had with his father, the emperor, had nothing to do with him. Imperial father, this son needs to use the 2 imperial physicians. Please allow it. Because his heart was too weak, Lu Chengdi could not wait for his son to leave. He waved his hand, allow, without asking for the reason. Thank you, father. Son will take his leave. The 2 imperial physicians who pretended to be in the background were still retreating. Li Hongyuan directly turned and left. His behavior, to put it seriously, was offensive. However, in Lu Chengdi's eyes, it was his son who was angry. On the day of the emperor's birthday, his son saw how he reacted when he received Momo's portrait. Then, he slept with another woman and was conferred the title of imperial concubine. His son must be unhappy now. Li Hongyuan took people out of the palace. He directly ordered people to take the imperial physicians and send them to the imperial college. As for what would happen to the 2 imperial physicians, sorry, but don't expect the living king of hell to care. Li Hongyuan returned to the palace. Jing Wan was anxiously waiting for him. When she saw Li Hongyuan, she hurried to greet him. "Ah Yuan, how is it?" If it were not for her status, she would have rushed over personally. In fact, it was not that she could not go. However, if she went, not only would she not be able to help, but that family would also be busy serving her. That would be purely adding to the trouble. The imperial physicians have sent it over. What could be done had been done. Next, they could only wait for the results. Seeing that Jing Wan could not sit still, Li Hongyuan's expression was a little gloomy. However, he could not flare up now. He sent people over to report immediately when the results were out. However, they waited for nearly 24 hours. This night, Jing Wan did not sleep well. Of course, she was not the only one who did not sleep well. She did not sleep well, so Li Hongyuan naturally followed. His face could not be any darker. Then, the news finally came. The child was finally born, but the mother's body was bleeding profusely. She was saved, but her vitality was greatly damaged. It would be impossible for her to recover in a short time. Moreover, she was afraid that she could not give birth again. Moreover, the child was restrained in the mother's body for too long, which was not good. It was not known whether the child could survive. This situation seemed to be a great blessing. Jingwan's heart was still heavy. She asked Nanny Gong to open the storeroom and selected a lot of good medicinal materials to send over. As long as the child could recover, it would be fine. Even if she could not give birth again, she would not let her suffer as long as she was alive. However, the child was in the womb for too long. She was afraid that there would be no amniotic fluid, which would cause hypoxia. In the end, the child would suffer from anoxic cerebral palsy, which would be devastating to Xiangshuang. For Li Hongyuan, giving birth was just a matter. Although it was dangerous, he did not take it seriously. However, after listening to Jingwan's details, his eyes narrowed slightly. For other women, no matter how many of them died, it was not a big deal. But for Wan, Li Hongyuan was thinking about the possibility of not letting Jingwan have a child. When the libation lord received the things sent by Jingwan, he naturally thanked her profusely. Then, seeing so many good things, some people would not be able to see them in their lifetime. Naturally, they could not help but be greedy. They held the things in their hands and did not want to put them down. Seeing this, Nanny Gong was very clear about these things. Naturally, she hinted a few words. Was these things more important, or was your husband's future more important? You must think clearly. Although Jin Wangye had no power or influence, but to block the future of some people, it was also an easy matter. Nanny Gong looked at Zhou Yingshuang's husband again. Wang Fei Nyongyang is very concerned about your wife. After all, after Wang Fei Nyongyang entered the capital, she only made friends with a few girls. If it were not for her status, she would probably visit them in person. Wang Fei Nyongyang knows that you are a person who values friendship and righteousness. Don't disappoint Wang Fei Nyongyang's expectations. In the future. Her unfinished words were clear to everyone. Nanny Gong took her leave. The libation lord's family had different thoughts. However, as long as they had a little brain, they should know what to do. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/10342227. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.